coast could be wintry, however further inland it will be much clearer. Icy stretches are expected in some parts. Outbreaks of rain and snow will affect northern and some central parts of Scotland, and although clearer skies are likely further south, there will be generally a lot more frost and some ice around. Across Northern Ireland, cloud will be spreading in from the west and there'll be the odd patch of light rain. That cloud should begin to lift the temperatures a little though. Through Sunday morning there'll be some showery rain and local snow, mainly across northern and eastern areas. Elsewhere, sunnier weather is likely. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
It's time to remind ourselves, there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Very excited about tonight's show. My Mark Meets guest is the great British battle axe herself, one of the best-known spouses in British politics, Christine Hamilton. We'll talk about her media career, theatre, the first ever I'm a Celeb series, and her life in politics. In The Clash, after a week to forget, has Bojo lost his mojo? Also, is Curry racist? Plus, my brilliant panel will be reacting to the big stories of the day. Plus, in my big opinion, after another dreadful COVID press conference, sage are the turkey that need to get stuffed. You won't want to miss that one. I'm not pulling my punches. I'll see you in 2 minutes after the headlines with Karen.
Thank you, Mark. Here are your latest headlines. Face coverings will once again become mandatory in shops and on public transport. The Prime Minister is tightening COVID rules after 2 people in the UK tested positive for the new Omicron variant. All contacts with those who test positive with the strain must now self-isolate for 10 days. Travellers arriving in the UK will also need to quarantine until they have a negative PCR test. And the government is speeding up the booster vaccine programme.
It does appear that Omicron spreads very rapidly and can be spread between people who are double vaccinated. There is also a very extensive mutation, which means it diverges quite significantly from previous configurations of the virus, and as a result it might, at least in part, reduce the protection of our vaccines over time.
3 people have been killed by falling trees as Storm Arwen hit the UK with 100-mile-an-hour winds. More than 100,000 homes have suffered power cuts across the UK. Yellow weather warnings remain in place. The Met Office are advising people to avoid unnecessary travel. Security Minister Damian Hinds insists relations between the UK and France remain strong. It's after a diplomatic row between the two countries over how to deal with migrants crossing the Channel. Mr Hinds is defending Boris Johnson's move to tweet a letter to French President Emmanuel Macron. It follows the death of 27 migrants when their boat sank in the Channel on Wednesday. Former England cricket captain Michael Vaughan says he's sorry for the hurt his former teammate Azeem Rafiq experienced. Earlier this month, Rafiq told MPs he faced institutional racism at Yorkshire. Vaughan was among a number of figures implicated in the case, but he denies the claims. Pharmacists in Scotland are on a knife edge, they say, from being overworked. That's according to a new survey from the Royal Pharmaceutical Society. It reveals almost 9 in 10 people working in the sector fear that they are at risk of burnout, and almost a third are considering quitting. The festive season is officially underway at Westminster. A giant Christmas tree was craned into position in front of the Houses of Parliament today. The spruce is 42 feet tall and was felled earlier in the week in Northumberland. You are right up to date. Now, back to Mark Dolan tonight.
We do like a Christmas tree on this show. Now, you're watching Mark Dolan tonight. We've got a fabulous Saturday night programme lined up for you. We'll bring you a heady mix of information, opinion and entertainment. My Mark Meets guest tonight is Kristina Hamilton, one of the best-known political spouses in the country, a national treasure and a reality star. She was in the first series of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here, and she is quite the survivor. She calls herself the Great British Battle Axe. And she's live at 10. In The Clash, after this week's disastrous speech in front of business leaders in which he rambled on about Peppa Pig World and with concerns about his stewardship of the number 10 operation, plus the rising cost of living, an eco-agenda and a migrant crisis in the Channel, we'll be asking, has Bojo lost his mojo? Also in tonight's show, we're going to talk about another week, another absentee on Strictly Come Dancing with former Strictly Pro dancer Kristina Rihanoff. Let me tell you about Mark Dolan tonight. This is the show where the people on the show who are ill still turn up for work, folks. In FAQs, I shouldn't shout, we discuss whether the word curry is racist. That is a genuine question. And as you can tell, my voice is not 100%. So Nick Dixon, the brilliant comedian and presenter, will be stepping in for the last half of the show to go through the news agenda and tomorrow's front pages with my amazing panel. And the brilliant John Gaunt will also join them at around 10:40. So sparks will fly. But my priority tonight, with a voice or no voice, is to get your views on the national television airwaves. You know I love hearing from you, so keep your thoughts coming. And get your emails to Nick as well later in the show, mark@gbnews.uk. A big 3 hours to come, so fire up the kettle and let's get a brew going. I'd like a lemsip if you've got one. Let's get to work. Let me clear my throat for this one. Now, I'm losing my voice, but I will get these words out. Welcome to hell. Another gloomy press conference in that 2.6 million quid studio that you and I paid for. It was all very familiar. A tired and defeated-looking Prime Minister, back in the pocket of sage scientists and the professors of gloom and doom, Witty and Valence, the scariest double act since the craze, serving up their usual recipe of apocalyptic predictions and worst-case scenarios.
We will require all contacts of those who test positive with a suspected case of Omicron to self-isolate for 10 days, regardless of your vaccination status. We will also go further in asking all of you to help contain the spread of this variant by tightening up the rules on face coverings in shops and on public transport.
Omicron, more like Omicrap, frankly. Surprise, surprise, in the run-up to Christmas, a new variant of concern has emerged. Christmas wouldn't be Christmas if it wasn't being threatened with being taken away. Well, I'm not concerned about this new variant of concern, because we're done now. With just a few weeks until Christmas, this goose is cooked, and it's time for this turkey to get stuffed. In my view, a failed attempt to control this virus for over a year and a half has done more than enough damage to this country and its people. And yet, with this press conference, we're now back on track for many more months, if not years, of the same. One of the most respected medics in the world, Professor Jay Bhattacharya, head of Stanford Medical School in California in the United States, has described lockdowns as the biggest public health cock-up in history. That's right, the biggest public health cock-up in history. Now, this is a globally respected scientist, not a swivel-eyed nut job tweeting from his mother's bedroom. If we're going to talk about variants of concern, I'm more concerned about cancer. I'm more concerned about heart disease. I'm more concerned about mental health. I'm more concerned about type 2 diabetes. And I'm more concerned about dementia. I'm more concerned about kids and their education and their quality of life. I'm more concerned about the long-term health of the economy, which pays for the NHS, schools, policing, welfare, defence, housing, and more. I'm more concerned about a budget deficit in which more is going out than is coming in. And I'm more concerned about over 2 trillion quid's worth of national debt currently running at 103.6% of gross domestic product, which means the debt is now bigger than the economy itself. Well done, everyone. If we're going to talk about variants of concern, I'm more concerned about the lasting societal damage of COVID passports, which predicates certain rights and access to services based upon your health status. I'm more concerned about the crushing of scientific debate around COVID itself and the vaccine. For example, it's been little reported that the diagnosed cases of the new variant were reportedly among vaccinated patients. How inconvenient for the jab-happy narrative. Fabulous though the vaccines are against severe illness and death, and I'm double jabbed and I will get the booster, they don't stop transmission, and I've got questions about their side effects. Who cares if those side effects are rare? If you're not in a vulnerable group, why pressurise people to have it with the threat of losing your job for non-compliance? And why vaccinate young children? They should not be jabbed, in my view. But don't take my word for it. That was the view of the JCVI, the organisation that advises the government on vaccines. And I stand by their decision. The government didn't. I'm more concerned that we seem to have ignored the principle of natural immunity. Study after study demonstrates that if healthy people get COVID and recover, their protection surpasses that of any vaccine by an order of magnitude. I'm more concerned about almost everything except COVID, because we've had nearly 2 years of this, and it's got to stop. We've sacrificed so much for this nasty virus, and yes, we all hate it, and we've lost too many people. But it's a virus non-fatal to almost everyone, and it's a virus which a third of the population have been advised to pretend they've got. Act like you've got it. Remember that? Dance like no one's watching. Sing like no one's listening. And I'm concerned about this press conference today because it takes us back to the cosy COVID consensus, the old narrative. Lockdown, mask up, and screw your freedom. It takes us back to square one. It starts with masks, but social distancing, work from home orders, and lockdowns are lurking around the corner because that is the script they are following. A script religiously followed also by most of the media today. Weren't they absolutely outrageous? All those journalists, living probably in comfortable, well-appointed North London homes, pushing for more measures because they can afford it. And let's talk about this mask mandate, in which incredibly the state decrees that we should cover our noses and our mouths without compelling, overwhelming evidence that they have any effect. What about the economic impact of masks? Retailers have told me on this programme that it affects sales. What about the social impact, the impact on small children's view of the world? What about the impact on the visually or audibly impaired? What about the impact on your own health of covering your cake hole and breathing in your own crap all day long? What about the environmental damage? The Keep Britain Tidy campaign told me that we throw away 40 million of these rags daily to go into landfill, or worse, the sea, where via fish they will ultimately enter the food chain. Well done, everyone. Now, don't take my word for it. Former Sage advisor Dr. Colin Brazier, who's been on this show, told the Telegraph newspaper that masks are nothing more than a security blanket, and he does not recommend them at all. Take a look at this. In the interview, he warned that some cloth masks have gaps which are invisible to the naked eye, but are 5,000 times the size of viral COVID particles. So the holes in the mask are 5,000 times bigger than the virus itself. He says the small sizes are not easily understood, but imagine marbles being fired at builders' scaffolding. Some might hit a pole and rebound, but obviously most will fly straight through. Dr. Axon says that medics were unable to comprehend the minuscule elements at play, adding a COVID viral particle is around 100 nanometers. Material gaps in blue surgical masks are 1,000 times that size, and cloth masks have got a gap 5,000 times as big. He acknowledges, as we all do, that masks will stop saliva flying out of your mouth. We all accept that. But he added, not everyone carrying COVID is coughing, but they're still breathing. Those aerosols escape masks and will render the mask ineffective. The public were demanding something must be done, said Dr. Axon. They got masks. It is just a comfort blanket. But it's now entrenched, he says, and we are entrenching bad behaviour. All around the world, you can look at mask mandates and superimpose on infection rates, and you cannot see that mask mandates made any effect whatsoever. The best thing you can say about any mask, says Dr. Axon, is that any positive effect they do have is too small to be measured. Wow. This is a former advisor to Sage, Dr. Colin Brazier. Even though the scientific case for masks is flaky at best, we were told early on by government advisors not to wear one, the damage is beyond doubt. And yet they are making an unwelcome return, like a particularly stubborn case of chlamydia. So why do we see the reintroduction of these measures as announced today at the press conference? Well, in my view, it's politics, not science. With a new variant upon us, the government are indulging in their favourite pastime, being seen to do something, window dressing. We are covering our faces so that they can cover their arses. We've spent almost 2 years on an expensive and damaging roller coaster powered by debatable science. Why does freedom-loving Florida have a lower per capita death rate from COVID than lockdown-loving California? No one will answer that question because there is no answer. Virus gonna virus. Now we're being softened up for more of these questionable measures. This new variant with the fancy name of Omicron has all the makings of an Omicron and an omni-shambles. With the vulnerable and anyone else who wants it triple jabbed, it's time to restore personal choice and individual judgment of risk, and we must all learn to live with this virus. Now, of course, we must follow the law at all times, absolutely. But now's the time to make your voices heard, peacefully and democratically, via platforms like this brand new television network, GBNews. Chris Whitty said this week that he feared people will no longer comply with future measures. And who could blame them? The cruel irony is that we comply to make this end, but our compliance means it never will. So many implications there. That's my big opinion. What's your view? Mark at gbnews.uk. I'm delighted to say I'm joined by my brilliant panel right now. And it's an all-star panel. Author Rebecca Jane, Peter Edwards, an old friend of mine, or we do like a ding-dong, former editor of Labour List, a brilliant broadcaster and commentator. And speaking of brilliant broadcaster and commentator, I'm also joined by Mike Parry, journalist and Fleet Street legend. It's very much the dream team tonight. And I'm delighted to say you guys will be doing more talking than I'll be doing for obvious reasons. Peter Edwards, let's kick off with you, if I may. Do you think that the government's measures, as announced today at the press conference, are proportionate and necessary?
Yeah, they do seem proportionate. I mean, I'm sorry you're unwell, but I thought your monologue was absolute nonsense, really. It was riddled with contradictions as well. I mean, I think there's a lot of evidence that face coverings are helpful and they keep the people you meet safe as well as oneself. You were complaining about lockdowns and the government haven't announced a lockdown. You were very selective in your evidence and you didn't quote any statistics at all. And you complained about government exhortations for public to voluntarily have the vaccine, but have had the vaccine yourself. I mean, it's baffling, really, your monologue. In terms of what the government announced tonight, I think face coverings are sensible. For those of us that live in London, they've been mandatory on the tube for a few weeks, although there seems to be very little way of actually enforcing that. To me, it's positive that face coverings will be rolled out a bit more widely. I think I share the concern we all have, which is that there's potential for another wave. Omicron, if I'm saying that right, is very alarming, and obviously it all makes us cautious about what's going to happen over Christmas and January and February. But to start relatively gradually with face coverings, I think is sensible. And I think now we want guidance and a bit of clarity for people like school teachers, kids in schools, better ventilation, and how these kind of key public services are going to be affected and kept safe.
Peter Edwards, does it not bother you, and you said that I didn't give any detail or any statistics, most of that monologue was quoting world-renowned engineers and medics. For example, Colin Brazier, who was a former SAGE advisor, who's an expert on airborne aerosols, pointed out that the virus is between 1,000 and 5,000 times smaller than the holes in a mask.
Why do you think face coverings are recommended by the government? Left,
I believe it's
right,
political, Peter. I believe it's there to remind people we're in a pandemic, and I think it's about control.
Why do you think face coverings are recommended by nearly every government in the world?
Because I think that they are collectively making a mistake. They're falling into a political trap of being seen to do something. Peter, why, when Florida lifted the mask mandate many months ago, did cases fall?
Well, I'd imagine it's because of 1, climate, 2, depopulation, and 3, different federal guidance.
OK, so Florida is one of the most densely populated states in America. If you mention the weather, it's not bad in California, whose rates of COVID still tower above those in Florida. And California has a younger, healthier population.
What's the population density of California versus Britain? You don't know, do you?
I don't have the answer to that. I've compared.
So don't quote it as evidence.
Peter, I think comparing two US states with each other is rather more solid than comparing a US state with the UK. What about
We're having
Sweden?
a debate about Britain.
What about Sweden? Why isn't everyone in Sweden in hospital with COVID at the moment?
Well, I think you ought to ask a Swedish commentator about that.
Well, I mean, you've asked me about the UK and America.
We're in the UK.
I can give you...
This is called GBNews.
The COVID deaths in Sweden, in a population of 10 million people, is 15,000, with an average tragic age of death of over 82.
Is that due to a high level of compliance with government advice?
Well, maybe, but that would be the point, is that people can choose. And that's my problem with masks. It's not the masks themselves, it's the mandate. But Peter, you know I love your thoughts. And look, for God's sakes, many people will agree with you, perhaps the majority. Rebecca Jane, welcome to the show. What's your view?
Well, I'm firmly on your side. I'm not buying into any of it. I've had enough of COVID. No offence, I have had it. I'm double vaccinated. I've lost people to it. We've got to get back to normal life. I'm no expert. I'm just a normal person. But what I am an expert in is that I own a private mental health care clinic. And what I can tell you is that we absolutely cannot afford to go through another lockdown because we will lose far too many more people. And that is completely missed in all of this. The anxiety levels that are driven through this country, I've seen over a 200% rise in people that are suicidal. And there's no coincidence that it is since that COVID happened and all these lockdowns, face masks, the anxiety that creates, is it actually that beneficial? No, I'm sorry, but I agree with you, Mark, that I don't think that the evidence is there to back it up. So, no, we need to go back to normal life. Enough is enough. And we can't afford to do this again, mentally, financially, physically. We can't.
Peter Edwards is a good friend of mine, Mike Parry, as are you. And I would say that the majority of the public support what he has said. What's your view?
Sorry, Mike, talking to me.
Yeah, I know you're not used to me being so nice to you, Mike.
No. Look, I think masks work, and the reason I think they work is because...
Mike, I've asked you not to drink before you come on air.
Yeah, if you look at last winter, when people were wearing masks, the level of flu epidemic that we've had in the previous 30 years of winters disappeared. And it disappeared because people were wearing masks. Now, I don't see wearing a mask as, me being denied of my freedom. What I see it as my personal choice. And my personal choice means I'm taking personal responsibility for my well-being and the well-being of people around me. Now, it's all very well to quote these figures about how minute the COVID transmissions are compared to the whole of the mask and all
those annoying facts.
OK, that's fine. But
those pesky statistics.
Yeah, but if two people are wearing masks, then it halves the problem, doesn't it? Because obviously it's not one person breathing on another with a mask, it's two people with masks. Flu rates went down massively last winter because people were wearing masks.
Because
and I can't see how it's an imposition on your liberty or your freedom to be asked to wear a mask. I wear a mask on a train. I came in on public transport to the studio tonight because I want to protect myself and I want to protect other people. I don't see that being a problem. And incidentally, talking about the Prime Minister, which you spoke about earlier, I don't think he was clownish today. I thought he was actually very good today. The Peppa Pig delivery was a bit of a fiasco, but Peppa Pig is a very successful British company, so I'm glad he got that into his speech.
And you are Mike Porky Parry, don't forget.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you very much indeed. I have an obvious self-interest in promoting porkers and pigs. But no, the other thing I was going to say is that I don't know why people are criticising. When all this first happened, it was, said that we moved too slowly and we did not control flights from China into this country. It originated in China and we didn't close down incoming flights from China for weeks, if not months. Now we know the next variant is coming from South Africa. We've closed down flights in from South Africa. Surely that's just common sense, isn't it? It's just common sense that if that's where it's all happening, in the southern tip of the continent of Africa, then we have to ban flights from all those countries there. I can't see how this is an infringement on anybody's liberty. I think it's taking action quickly. I think it's necessary action, and I applaud it.
Peter, I like measures that work. And I think that the vaccines are fantastic for those who are vulnerable. It clearly has an impact on tragic deaths and hospitalisations. But don't you think that we need to segue to a position in which the public can once again identify the risks of COVID and anything else for themselves?
I think we've been in that position for many months already.
Correct. And look how well it's gone in England, Peter. England is the envy of Europe right now, with flatlining cases, hospitalisations and deaths.
Well, I think there are other reasons to that. Like we also had a warm summer, and then we had a relatively...
You're obsessed with the weather.
...mild autumn. Well, it affects how people socialise, and it also affects the infection rate, doesn't it?
But why did cases climb in Wales and in Scotland, who had stricter COVID measures? England basically impersonated freedom from the 19th of July, and your best mate, Keir Starmer, said it was reckless, but it would have been reckless not to, it turns out.
Well, I think the government has been very slow and sluggish in announcing some of these measures. I think they've been quicker this time around because they've learned the lessons of the third lockdown, which was very late to be announced. But there was always going to be a lower infection rate in the summer and a higher infection rate in the winter. What's happening today is very sad and very worrying, but was probably foreseen by everyone in the United Kingdom.
Mark, you just said, sorry to interrupt you just said that we're doing better here than anywhere in Europe, OK?
Correct.
80% of people in this country over 12 have now been double jabbed, and we have more triple jab people than anywhere in Europe.
All adults, adults over 18 double jab.
That's right. Now, that's down to the health policy we've pursued over the last 12 or 15 months. So if that's got us to where we are now, shouldn't we say, OK, we'll have faith in the next step, the next stage, to try and protect us against the new variant? But surely we've got a track record of getting it right.
We've had no mask mandates in England since July the 19th, and cases fell.
But we should have self-responsibility to ask people to wear the mask to protect other people.
Mark,
OK, well, let me give Rebecca Jane the last thought on this for now. Rebecca Jane, will you conclude with your thoughts?
My thoughts are, enough's enough, get back to work, get back to normal life, and this has just got to stop. There will always be a new variant. There will always be something else. I don't think it's personal responsibility, and I actually take a little bit of offence at that, because as somebody that is very interested in the law aspect of this, I want to know how much the public have been consulted. I don't think that they have. And the way that they bring in these new laws and everything literally overnight is absolutely against our human rights. So I'm having none of it. I'm not complying with all of this, and it is what it is.
Could this be the best panel we've had on the show? I think there's every chance it is. But what are your thoughts? Mark at gbnews.uk. Are you in Team Parry or Team Edwards? Tell me about that. Or perhaps you are in Team Jane. That's right, author Rebecca Jane. Her first appearance on Mark Dolan tonight, and she's very welcome. But what's your view? Do let me know your thoughts. Also coming up, we're going to speak to Strictly star Kristina Rihanoff, because the stars on that show are falling like flies, whereas on this programme, the show must go on. After this, in the clash, has Bojo lost his mojo? See you shortly.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
So many emails coming in response to my big opinion. I'm delighted to say Carl, our head of social media on tonight's show, is crafting the big opinion monologue, and he'll be putting it onto Twitter in the next couple of minutes. But essentially, I'm not having this new variant of concern. I'm more concerned about cancer, about the economy, and about the future of this country. Let's have a look at some of your emails. Alan says, Mark, I hope you're better soon. I'm in Team Jane. We should all be Boris and his mates can pepper pig off. Nice line, Alan. Should have put that in my big opinion. Julia says, Mark, my auntie Reets and I both completely agree with everything you said this evening. Best wishes. Julia, thank you so much for your thoughts. Dave says, Mark, are you saying that hospital employees, doctors, nurses, surgeons shouldn't wear masks as they are useless, David? David, thank you so much for your counterbalance on that one. First of all, what's worn in hospitals is medical grade, which is not worn on public transport and in shops here in the UK. And also, most mask wearing is there to control the spread of bacteria, for example, in a surgical theatre, rather than the spread of viruses. But I do take your point, David. And as I said earlier, I think many people will share your view and that of Peter Edwards on my panel tonight. It's time now for The Clash, in which we tackle a major news story from opposing points of view, because, as you might have noticed, we like a bit of debate on this show. Now, after the Prime Minister's controversial speech to business leaders this week, in which he lost his place, rambled about Peppa Pig and impersonated a car, and following tonight's press conference, the freedom-loving Prime Minister appears to be back in the pocket of sage scientists, and with ongoing concerns about the messaging from and policy direction within Number 10. Has Boris lost his way? Has Bojo lost his mojo? Joining me now to debate this is Benjamin Loughnane, Research Fellow at the Bow Group Conservative think tank, and Councillor Joe Porter, who actually wants to support Boris. Joe, do you think that the Prime Minister is still up to the job?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Mark. I think in Boris Johnson, we have a Prime Minister who delivered Brexit, somebody who's put Britain at the forefront of global issues, and someone who's delivered the most successful vaccination programme in the world. And obviously we've seen a big success with the booster programme. We also must remember that after 11 years of power, Conservatives have been in power for 11 years now. We have a fast-growing economy that's recovering now from the pandemic. We've got wages going up as well. We've got jobs going up. We're doing really well as a country. And I think a lot of that is down to Boris Johnson's leadership. And it's been a very tough 2 years, and it's not been easy. Mistakes have been made. But overall, I think the Prime Minister has made a lot of the right calls, particularly July. You were just talking about the fact that obviously, compared to the rest of Europe, we have a lot fewer restrictions. We're one of the freest countries in Europe when you compare us to a lot of the other countries. That's because the Prime Minister made the right call for us to unlock in July, and because of the vaccination programme being such a big success story. So I think Boris Johnson has not lost his mojo. I think he's got a lot more to give. We've only seen the start of what he's got to give in terms of leadership. He's only had 2 years, so I hope there were quite a few more years, personally.
Well, I do agree with you fully, Joe, about the 19th of July. I'm like a stuck record, giving credit to the Prime Minister for sticking by his libertarian principles, lifting restrictions, cases fell, and England in particular are the envy of Europe when it comes to where we are with COVID. So you're so right to point that out. Although, hasn't some of the gloss of that been taken off with today's press conference, which goes very much against freedom?
I think we still have a freedom-loving Prime Minister in Boris Johnson. I'm not particularly a fan of face masks, nobody is, but at the end of the day, wearing a face mask is the right thing to do to not just protect yourself, but more importantly, protect those around us, particularly those who might be more vulnerable.
All great. And then you brought out that zinger about how great masks are. Well, look, you're entitled to your view. I fully accept my one is perhaps a minority one, Joe. We'll agree to differ. But Benjamin Loughnane, do you think Bojo's lost his mojo?
Well, I think the thing that proves it most is the first thing that Joe mentioned was Brexit, which was 2 years ago. Boris had this amazing energy when he went into the 2019 election. He had great energy when he was the Mayor of London. He had great energy during the Brexit campaign. He was known for being this great, energetic character. But over the past couple of years, it seems more and more his energy has been zapped, he's been drained. And I think we all have, to be honest. The past couple of years of lockdown and all of the restrictions and everything that we've been dealing with has been psychologically taxing on the entire country. And I think Boris is bearing some of the brunt of that. He looks like half the man he was before. But I do think Boris is still in there somewhere, and I'm asking him to come back out and be the Boris that he used to be when he had the bojo mojo, and he had the energy and the character and the charisma and the positive leadership skills where he didn't just go on the back foot and say, oh, OK, we'll have another lockdown, or, oh, OK, we'll bring back masks, or, oh, OK, I've been told that there's this new variant by these sort of scientists or weird ghouls who have told him that he's got to lock the whole country up again, and he goes halfway and says, oh, we'll just bring the face masks back. We need to get that positive Boris back, the Boris who actually believes in things and goes out and achieves them and does them and stops listening to all of these people who are surrounding him who don't really have the same ideas that he does, I think, deep down.
Look, Joe Porter, I have been grateful that the Prime Minister has been in post in the course of this pandemic, because I'm convinced that under any other Tory leader, but perhaps someone like Jeremy Hunt, who challenged Boris for the leadership of the Conservative Party, or Keir Starmer, we would have had more lockdowns, more economic damage, and a higher non-COVID death toll. So this is definitely not a Boris bashing fest. I'm also a huge Democrat, which is why I believe that he's got a strong mandate to run the country, an 80-seat majority. And he also got Brexit done, which was a triumph and places him in the history books. Joe, this guy's got talent. But when it comes to a lot of bread and butter issues, there are concerns. What about the migrant crisis? This is a Prime Minister who is not able to police our borders and keep the people of this country safe.
Well, when we voted for Brexit, we voted to take back control, and that includes taking back control of our borders. And I agree, the government needs to get tougher. They need to get a grip of our borders. And on a very personal level, I think Priti Patel's had a very tough job, and obviously Boris has as well with this issue. There are no easy solutions, but we need to get tough because it's what people voted for. They expect our borders to be controlled because we're a sovereign country, and that's what you naturally expect to happen. I think one thing I would also say with Boris Johnson is obviously, I think we've had this economic model, haven't we, for quite a long time, where a lot of people in working class areas have felt left behind. You know, we've had low wages, low growth, low productivity. And what I like about Boris is he's trying to change that. He's trying to spread opportunities by levelling up. He's trying to increase wages, trying to increase opportunity and productivity for a lot of those people who felt left behind. And I like the fact that he's doing that, and that we've got all these new Conservative MPs in red wall seats that are trying to spread those opportunities out, because I think that's really important going forward, because that's what people voted for. When they voted for Brexit, they didn't just vote to leave the EU, they voted for things to change, and that includes the economy, obviously includes immigration, it includes lots of different things like, you know, being out there on the global stage, being big on all those global issues like climate change, for example. And that's what we're seeing under Boris Johnson, someone who's injecting that energy and that passion, someone who's very patriotic. You know, one thing I love about Boris is he loves this country. He's very patriotic, and I want to see more of that from Boris. I want to see him, that belief in this country. I want him to do more of that going forwards. But it has been a tough few years. I hope that, you know, as we come out of this pandemic, you know, we're nearly there, we can see more of that Boris.
Joe, you've got a smart haircut. You've won the competition for Best Christmas Jumper, and you're super articulate, quite the opposite of the Prime Minister this week, addressing the Confederation of British Industry. He lost his way during his speech and then waffled on about Peppa Pig. I mean, this is a concern, isn't it? We can't just gloss over what's happening here.
Well, don't forget Peppa Pig's one of Britain's great exports. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Peppa Pig. I know a lot of people have probably come on here and said that, but I think it is a great British export. It's something that we should be proud of. And yeah, I think everyone makes, you know, a speech where they slip up occasionally. It happens to people. It's a human thing. I mean, it is regretful, but people slip up sometimes. And I think what people like about Boris, he's not one of these slick politicians like Tony Blair or David Cameron, you know, or perhaps even the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak. He's different in his own sort of style. You know, he's quite a human sort of guy. And I think people can relate to that. You know, as a Conservative activist, you know, as a Conservative councillor, I go out campaigning on, you know, on a weekly, monthly basis, and I speak to people out there across the country, not just here in North Staffordshire, and people love Boris. He's so popular. People, you know, have got such affection for the guy. You know, wherever he goes, he pulls in the crowds. And I think what we've got to remember is this guy he can win elections, and, you know, he's proven the last few years that he can make tough decisions. We just need him to crack on with delivering that agenda that Conservatives were given in 2019, which is to deliver post-Brexit change to transform this country into an even greater place.
Benjamin, here's the rub with Boris Johnson. He is stubbornly popular, and you underestimate him at your peril.
Yeah, Boris, I think, you know, is far better than some of the alternatives. And there's, you know, very few people currently who are in contention for leadership who I would want to replace Boris with. But what I want to see Boris do is be more like Boris and less like all of the people who surround him, who push him into certain kinds of ways of governing. He needs to embrace that spirit that he had 2 years ago and when he was the Mayor of London, and push on with that rather than bowing to pressure from Europe and America and the people around him in cabinet. But on the matter of the migrant crisis, this is something which he has failed to do anything about, not just for the past few months, not just for the past year, but for 2 years now. This has been raging, this has been going on up and up and up in terms of the figures. And people have been saying constantly, you need to get a grip on this. And he hasn't said anything. He's done nothing about it until the other day when we had that terrible tragedy in the Channel. And it was only then that he sort of woke up to it and realised, this could turn very nasty. This could, you know, spell the end of my premiership if I don't get a grip of it. But it's only because it's in his interests now that he's decided to get a grip of it. I don't think he's ever really cared about the issue. I don't think he cares much about immigration as a whole. I think it's something which he regards as a non-issue. But he really needs to get a grip on this, because if he doesn't, it will condemn his legacy. He has great potential to be a great leader. He has that Churchillian characteristic which could be channeled into doing some really incredible things. But if he misses this one key thing, the Channel migrant crisis, it could spell the end for Boris. And I really hope it doesn't happen.
Benjamin, I'm going to read between the lines and assume you don't want a Labour government at the next election. And with that in mind, if a future Conservative administration were in peril, do you think there's anyone better than Boris that could replace him? If Boris is the problem, what's the solution?
Well, I don't want a Labour government at the next election, but I also didn't want one at this election, and it seems to be what we've got. Unfortunately, it's just a Labour government dressed up in blue, doing all the same things that a Labour government would have done otherwise. So a Labour government would have done exactly the same thing on the migrant crisis. It would have done exactly the same thing on lockdown, although perhaps worse, but still, nonetheless, the same policy. It would have pursued all of the same policies on tax rises, on all sorts of different things. So what have we actually got? What's the distinction? We need this Conservative government to be an actual Conservative government, not a Labour government in disguise, and then we'll be happy. But no, I don't want a Labour government, either way.
And Benjamin, what's your prognosis for Boris? Does he make it to the next election, or will he be sunk by a big scandal? What do you think is going to happen? Let's get our crystal balls out. Does he fight the next election? What do you think is going to happen?
Well, he seems to have this almost Trump-like effect, where the more scandals that pile up against him, the more he comes out smelling of roses, because you know, when there's so many different things being railed against him at the same time, nothing really ever sticks. I think the only way that something would bring him down is if there was one clear scandal which was drawn out and didn't go away. But at the moment, it's things that, you know, wallpaper, 1 week, and then the next week, something else, and then something else, and then something else. I think something like the Channel crisis, if it gets worse, if more people die, and if the situation is not solved and it escalates in tensions with France and we start to see this posturing from Macron, his electioneering, anti-British remarks and sentiments, I think those sorts of things are where we start to see the cracks. The main thing is if the polls flip and the red wall MPs start to think they're going to lose their seats. Because the moment he starts to lose support from those red wall seats, the thing that sort of swept him into power, swept him into his landslide victory at the last election will suddenly disappear, and he won't have the same impetus as before.
Very briefly, Joe Porter, brilliant to have you on the show for the first time. Let's get your crystal ball out as well. What do you think is going to happen? What's the prognosis for the Prime Minister?
I very much hope that Boris will lead us into the next election. In fact, I'd like him to lead us into the one after that. I'd like him to have a full 10 years in power, because I think he's got 10 years that he's ready to give. He clearly wants 10 years, and I hope he's given that, because he's got a lot more to give. I think he's delivered Brexit, he's obviously delivered a strong economy, and he's led us out of this pandemic, or he's leading us out at the moment, and he's got a lot more to give. He just needs to be given the chance to deliver, and I hope that he's given that chance, because he is delivering for the British people. He's delivering the kind of change that people voted for when they voted Conservative in 2019.
My sincere thanks to Benjamin Loughnane, Research Fellow at the Bow Group Conservative think tank, and Conservative councillor Joe Porter. Gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Well, we've put the poll out there on Twitter, and here are the results. 81%, that's right, 81% of you say that Bojo has lost his mojo, he's lost his way. 19% say he's still got it. So clearly some work to be done there for the Prime Minister. Coming up, get your questions in for my Mark Meets guest, Kristina Hamilton. She's live at 10. Drop me an email now, mark@gbnews.uk. But after this, we will speak to a former star of Strictly on why the cast of that show are dropping like flies. I can't imagine what that feels like. See you in 2.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Great to have your company this evening. On masks, Jim says, watch a cigarette smoker. That cloud of smoke they blow out has just been drawn back through about 1 centimetre of tightly packed filter material. Smoke particles are approximately 1 to 2 microns. COVID virus particles are a quarter that size and are being exhaled through less than a millimetre of light fabric. It will make 0 difference. Also quite a troubling email from Paul, who says, Dear Mark, my GP surgery stopped seeing patients face-to-face at the start of the pandemic. Over recent months, I've suffered insufferable and progressive pains in my hips, back and shoulders. My GP diagnosed over the phone arthritis. I've recently been diagnosed by my hospital as having prostate cancer. I'm now in treatment and thanks to their expert care and diligence responding well. Everyone must accept that lockdowns have predictable consequences that are becoming very clear. One of the greatest casualties will be missed diagnoses, mine included. Well, Paul, thank you for sharing your story, and I wish you a speedy recovery. Now, another Strictly Come Dancing judge will be absent from this weekend's panel after being told to self-isolate by NHS Test and Trace. Last weekend, Cynthia Erivo filled in for Craig Revel-Horwood after he tested positive, and the actress will replace Motsi Mabuse this week. Are you keeping up? After she announced that she will miss the show. Despite having had 3 jabs, the UK government does not recognise German EU vaccines, so she's got to stay at home. Welcome to Bonkers 2021. Well, joining me to discuss this is former Strictly Pro, Kristina Rihanoff. Hi, Kristina.
Hello, everybody. Hi, Mark.
Hey, Kristina, listen, great to see you. I don't normally sound like Joe Cocker, by the way.
Yeah, the voice is a little strange, I must say.
Kristina, I'm driving home for Christmas. Got my suitcase in the back. Anyway, I won't sing because I don't want to lose my lovely audience. Kristina, do you think that the BBC are overreacting? Because I feel like soon there will be no contestants.
Look, I think the BBC just protecting themselves. They absolutely have to follow the government rules. And I think what they have to do, they've done a good job so far. It is what it is. If you have to isolate, people obviously have to step down for a week and so on. But I think there is a bigger issue that our government does not accept other countries' vaccines. I'm in this position with my mom. She's in Russia and Russian vaccine is not recognized here. I, however, can travel to Russia and they accept our vaccines there as long as I can show the QR codes. My mom cannot travel here. It creates a lot of issues for a lot of families who live in different countries. And I don't really understand why those vaccines are not acceptable here. It's sort of with some kind of superior nation and all our vaccines are the best ones, and that's that. I feel that it's a very strange concept, especially if Motsi said that she tested negative several times. She was doing her PCR tests and she's negative and she had those vaccines and she had an extra booster jab. It doesn't really quite make sense why she has to still isolate and she can't come here.
And Kristina, can you give me an idea of how hard it is for the professional dancers and the celebrities with all of these people not able to be in the show?
It is extremely hard. As a professional dancer, it's all what you're looking for all year around, to be on the show and obviously do your journey with your partner, take them through every single dance, and it's a very intense show as well. We all who worked on the show and working on the show, we loved it, and it's our livelihood. So to miss a week and kind of get out of that sort of bubble is really hard emotionally and physically. You know, you kind of want to be there. You want to be there for your partner. So it's just not a very nice situation to be in. And unfortunately, we do have somebody missing the show every single week. And then there is the question, is it fair that they're missing a week and then they're back and somebody else is eliminated? It's not really, kind of a great concept as well, because maybe it wasn't that couple time to go, but, just the cards played out a little bit differently. So I think it's a really strange concept to let the couple miss the show and then they're back and obviously someone else got eliminated. I think, maybe the rules slightly can be changed there. But, we have to follow the rules. Our government tells us what to do, and we're all in that some sort of dictatorship. I feel like I'm back in USSR at the moment.
I completely agree with you. Kristina, I do hope you'll join me as a Mark Meets interview guest in the weeks to come. I wish we had longer. I know that you run a lot of online dance tutorials. How can people find out more about what you do?
Oh, of course, in lockdown, as everybody else, I run everything online, and I still do. It's very simple, bespokeballroom.com. It's my dance school, my dance academy, and I teach anyone and everyone. And as everybody knows, if I taught Joe Sargent how to dance,
I'm going to join.
I can teach anyone.
Bespoke Ballroom. Kristina, come and have a proper chat with me really soon. Brilliant stuff. Lots more to come. Get your questions in to Christine Hamilton in 5 minutes' time. mark@gbnews.uk. She's my Mark Meets guest. But also, I'm delighted to say that there are questions coming in, not just for Christine, but for a conversation about curry as well. Is it racist? We'll discuss that after the weather.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking to get off to a cold, frosty and in places icy start. Let's take a look at the details. Cornwall and the far west of Devon will start Sunday rather cloudy with some showers feeding in from the north. Elsewhere across southwest England it will be dry and fairly clear but frosty. Southeast England will also be holding on to a fair amount of cloudy and breezy weather, although most places should start the day dry here. Across Wales, there will be a few showers towards the west, but much of the country will be dry with fairly clear skies and a fairly widespread frost. The northwest of England will begin Sunday dry, clear and frosty too, and after the very windy weather that we saw on Saturday, the northerly breeze will finally have eased down. A few showers will continue to filter into the northeast of England, one or two of which could be wintry. However, further inland it will be much clearer. Icy stretches are expected in some parts. Outbreaks of rain and snow will affect northern and some central parts of Scotland, and although clearer skies are likely further south, there will be generally a lot more frost and some ice around. Across Northern Ireland, cloud will be spreading in from the west and there'll be the odd patch of light rain. That cloud should begin to lift the temperatures a little though. Through Sunday morning there'll be some showery rain and local snow, mainly across northern and eastern areas. Elsewhere, sunnier weather is likely. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
There we are. Now, let me tell you that clearly my voice has seen and heard better days. The brilliant comedian Nick Dixon will be stepping in to take over the show at 10:40. But before then, we're going to have some fun. We're going to speak to perhaps the best-known political spouse, certainly in the last couple of decades, Kristina Hamilton, reality star, other half of Neil Hamilton. We'll talk about politics, and I'm a celebrity. So get your questions in now, mark@gbnews.uk. And also, before I go, is curry racist? First up, the headlines with Karen.
Thank you, Mark. These are your latest headlines. Face coverings will again become mandatory in shops and on public transport. The Prime Minister is introducing a series of new measures after two people in the UK tested positive for the new Omicron variant of COVID. Those who have had contact with someone who tests positive with the strain must self-isolate for 10 days. Travellers arriving in the UK will need to quarantine until they have a negative PCR test. The government is also fast-tracking the booster vaccine programme in a bid to curb the spread of Omicron.
It does appear that Omicron spreads very rapidly and can be spread between people who are double vaccinated. There is also a very extensive mutation, which means it diverges quite significantly from previous configurations of the virus. And as a result, it might, at least in part, reduce the protection of our vaccines over time.
3 people have been killed as Storm Arwen brought winds of up to 100 miles an hour. More than 100,000 homes have suffered power cuts across the UK. Amber and yellow weather warnings remain in place. The Met Office are advising people to avoid any unnecessary travel. Security Minister Damien Hines insists relations between the UK and France remain strong. It's after a diplomatic row between the two countries over migrants crossing the Channel. Mr. Hines is defending Boris Johnson for tweeting a letter to French President Emmanuel Macron, a move which enraged Paris. It follows the death of 27 migrants when their boat sank in the Channel on Wednesday. Police have released an image of a van they're searching for as part of the investigation into the fatal stabbing of 12-year-old Ava White. Officers believe key witnesses may have been travelling in the vehicle. 4 teenage boys aged between 13 and 15 have been arrested on suspicion of murder. Former England cricket captain Michael Vaughan says he's sorry for the hurt caused to his former teammate Azim Rafiq. Earlier this month, Mr. Rafiq told MPs he faced institutional racism at Yorkshire Cricket Club. Michael Vaughan was among a number of figures implicated in the case, but he denies the claims. The festive season is officially underway at Westminster. A giant Christmas tree was craned into position in front of the Houses of Parliament today. The spruce is 42 feet tall and was felled earlier in the week in Northumberland. You're right up to date. Now, back to Mark Dolan tonight.
Lots of emails coming in response to my big opinion monologue at the start of the show. You can catch it on our Twitter feed at GBNews. Our social media producer, Carl, has crafted it down to about 7 minutes. It's croaky, but it comes from the heart. I would use my last breath to say some of the words shared in my big opinion tonight. Irene has emailed in. Hello, Mark. I hope you feel better soon. Where do you find some of your deluded guests? Both journalists you have on the show tonight are following the government narrative. They're paid to do so and remind me of why I stopped reading the mainstream media years ago. There's never anything worth reading. I use my local paper to light a fire. That's the only place for it. I back your narrative along with your female panellist, and the other two should be cancelled. Well, Irene, you know as well as I do that no one gets cancelled on my watch. I don't even cancel myself, even in this state. Well, I'm delighted to say that the very talented comedian and broadcaster Nick Dixon will be stepping into the hot seat in 30 minutes' time at 10:40. One other quick email, and this is from Paul. And he's written an email with a subject heading croaky voice. And Paul says, Mark, try sucking, excuse me, I'll put my teeth back in. Try sucking some nippets. Many small pharmacies sell them. Well, Paul, I'll be honest with you, I haven't sucked on nippets since before I got married, but I might give it a whirl after the show. Paul also says, try drinking warm red wine with loads of strong honey. Well, that works for me, any excuse. And Paul finally says, your voice might be failing you, but you have a lot of other people that you've given a voice to with your monologue. Hold the line. Thank you so much, Paul, and thanks for your good wishes about my slightly croaky voice. Another person's recommended Bovril, which is one of my favourite drinks. Lots of emails. So many emails I couldn't possibly catch up because now it's time for this. Mark Meets. Yes, indeed, it's time for Mark Meets, in which I interview the biggest names in the world of showbiz, sport and politics. Or I speak to people that simply have a big story to tell. Well, tonight, one of the best known and most iconic political spouses in the country, Kristina Hamilton, wife of former Conservative MP and now UKIP leader Neil Hamilton, has become a big star in her own right. following famous appearances with Neil on Have I Got News For You and a Louis Theroux documentary. Christine went on to present her own BBC chat show. She showed off her cooking skills on Celebrity MasterChef, and she came an impressive third in the very first series of I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. She's done panto, fairy godmother, obviously. She's toured a one-woman show and published a best-selling book entitled The Bumper Book of British Battle Axes. But I wouldn't call Christine a battle axe. I wouldn't dare. And I'm delighted to say she joins me now. Hi, Christine.
Hello, Mark. I'm so sorry about your voice, but can I say a great big thank you for hanging on at least to talk to me, because I would not want to be handed over to somebody else.
Well, listen, there's no way I would share you with anyone else, Christine. The only person I would consider sharing you with is Neil, and even that's a stretch.
Oh, certainly not. No. He's asleep downstairs. He's snoring in the chair.
Listen, congratulations. Big moment for the family. He is now the leader of a national political party, one of significant national profile, UKIP. Has it gone to his head? Is he bossy at home now?
Oh, heavens no. I mean, we met when we were 18, so, you know, I've ruled the roost ever since, so absolutely not. But going into politics second time round was absolutely his idea, not mine. And I'm marginally horrified, but obviously, as always, I will support him. But this time I am honestly taking a bit of a backseat. But no, certainly not, of course. Well, I tell you, to be perfectly honest, people often say, who wears the trousers? Well, the answer is that we wear a leg each, but I decide which pair we put on in the morning, and that is the important thing.
Well, I'll bring the belt next time I'm round. Christine, he is a gifted communicator with a long career in public life, and it feels right that he should become the leader of a political party because he's got a lot to say, a lot of experience, and he's got fire in his belly still.
Absolutely right. And he's a great man for the job. And there is so much to be said. I mean, people were criticising your, I can't remember what you called it now, your rant, your monologue.
Oh, yeah, my big opinion.
Your big opinion, that's right, your big opinion at the beginning. But, I mean, there's a huge void in British politics at the moment because the government has so veered. I don't want to get straight into politics, but here we go. The government has veered so far to the left in all sorts of spheres, whether it's, you know, economics or et cetera, or not stopping immigration, et cetera, et cetera. And the idea that because Brexit is done, that's fine, we can all forget about it. It's far from done, and there's a huge job to be done. And to me, the Tory government just doesn't seem to be up to it. So there is a big gap in British politics which has to be filled. And at the moment, the problem is that the various groups and parties that are filling that gap are all splintered. They need to somehow get their act together and fill that void properly.
Well,
and that's
Neil,
what Neil's trying to do.
Well, that's right. I mean, Neil is one of the big beasts in the political jungle. He is one of the best-known politicians in the country. So I think he's got the pulling power to get the job done. And it's important that he, along with other voices, hold the Prime Minister's feet to the fire on COVID measures, on freedom, on the economy, and on the migrant crisis in the Channel, of course.
Absolutely right. I was listening to your discussion earlier about these latest COVID restrictions. Am I right that 2 people in this country have got this new variant?
Yeah,
2. And yet we're all now got to wear masks when we go into a shop and goodness knows what. I went into a supermarket this afternoon. We went off to have our booster jabs. And afterwards, we just went off to a supermarket to get a few odd things. And I don't wear a mask in a shop. And I got some rather filthy looks, I noticed today, rather more than normal. Whether they kind of heard the news, which I hadn't, I don't know. But it's just mind-blowing the way all our freedoms are being restricted. And the gentleman earlier was talking about missed operations and misdiagnosis. Everything has been sacrificed on the altar of COVID, and we've just got to learn to live with the darn thing. It's not pleasant, and for people who get it, and obviously a lot of people have had it very seriously, but people have died of all sorts of other things while COVID's been going on, and that's just been overlooked.
So tell me about your early life. What did the little girl, Christine Hamilton, I believe Mary Christine Hamilton, want to be when she grew up?
Oh, very simple. All I wanted to do was marry a farmer. I had my farmer in mind. He was my brother's best friend, and something went wildly wrong, and I ended up marrying a fledgling politician. We met at the Federation of Conservative Students Conference back in 1969 up in Swinton Castle. So we were at separate universities, but the Conservative Association, two people from each University Conservative Association were able to go to this conference. And that was it. The die was cast. And I've been hooked to the political wagon ever since. I mean, I absolutely loved it. I mean, I went to Parliament long before Neil did. I went to work there as soon as I'd finished university. I went to, some of your older viewers might remember Sir Gerald Nabarro. I can sense a large swathe of people saying who, but he was very, very well known at the time, and that's who I started working for. And I had a great fun. I mean, I loved it at the Palace of Westminster. It was a tremendous place. And I initially, actually, by then, I'd finished the farmer's wife business, and I wanted to be an MP. But getting to the House of Commons and actually seeing it, that's why I went there, to have a look at it full time. At close quarters. When I got there, I very quickly realised that I actually hate confrontation. I don't like, you know, all that argumentative and all this sort of business. And I can always see, or nearly always, too many sides of a particular point. So it was not the job for me, but I've always been very happy, you know, just behind the front line. Sometimes pushing to the front line.
Christine, I was a researcher, a parliamentary researcher in the late 90s in the Commons, and I was struck by how powerless most normal backbench MPs are.
Oh, completely impotent, I always say. The average MP is utterly, utterly impotent, and there's absolutely nothing they can do beyond what Sir David Amess has highlighted so amazingly recently, looking after your constituency. And that is what the MP can do, but they're pretty powerless when it comes to, you know, shaping legislation. They can bring in private members' bills, which have a lot of good effect on the edges. But no, basically they're pretty impotent because the party machines are so important. And there's a limit to how often you can go on rebelling and still stay in the game.
And you worked with Neil in the Commons. So how did your relationship adapt to the fact that you became colleagues?
It wasn't a problem. We've really just spent our entire life working together. It really wasn't a problem. He had his department, I had mine. And then when he's just finished 5 years in the Welsh Parliament, and I did the same. I mean, the last thing I wanted to do was go back to looking after an MP and the constituency correspondence and all that sort of thing, and the diary and all the business. But we've thoroughly enjoyed it, actually. Neil is Welsh, which is, people say, what on earth was he doing that for? He is Welsh. His first name gives him away, which is Mostyn. So I feel I've done my bit. But no, it's just what we've always done, to be honest. Don't really know anything different. I think if you really get on, it just becomes a way of life and you accept it. If there's any sort of friction, then working together is going to bust you asunder.
And it doesn't give the old bounder any time to have an affair.
No, it doesn't give me much time either.
I was going to say that
about this, Mark. Excuse me.
Well, I have to say, I don't want to be unkind to Neil, but certainly you would turn heads wherever you went, Christine, as you still do. Let's talk about that unusual role that you've had, where you've been the political spouse and therefore sort of in Neil's shadow, but on the other hand, you've become a national celebrity. Those are two very different things, aren't they? Which role are you more comfortable with?
Well, up until 1997, when we hit the headlines, I wasn't even a household name in my own household. And then suddenly all hell broke loose. And I got described everything. I was, you know, the monstrous liability, to describe Lady Christine Hamilton as Lady Macbeth is to insult Lady Macbeth, was what a journalist called John Sweeney said about me. And I was, you know, the wife from hell, etc., etc. And I was also called a battle axe. So when Neil lost his seat in 97, and there I obviously lost my job, so we were both suddenly unemployed in rather unpropitious circumstances. it was, what the hell are we going to do now? You know, we had no income at all, suddenly back. So Neil came up with the idea. He said, look, we've got to turn a liability into an asset. And you've been described as a battle axe. Write a book, Christine Hamilton's book. He came up with the title, Christine Hamilton's Book of British Battle Axes. It was just, I mean, this was ages ago, 97. It's just about gutsy women. So we slowly turned the whole thing round, and we became an object of media curiosity, which led to us doing Have I Got News for You? And then, as you said, I had my chat show on BBC Three, which existed then, and we done pantomime. And in addition to what you've said, we've done the Rocky Horror Show. We've taken a show to the Edinburgh Festival, and for 20 years or so, really, we lived in a showbiz world, which was great fun, and it was very, very refreshing for me in particular to be out of politics. And I reckon we now have a much wider and more eclectic group of friends because of all our ridiculous showbizy stuff that we've done than we would have done if we'd stayed in frankly boring old politics. But that's me talking, not Neil.
I think, of course, and your story is one of survival, and that's why I'm such a fan of yours, the pair of you. Without wishing to intrude on private grief, there were challenges along the way. One or two political scandals, the Cash for Questions row. How bad did things get financially and career-wise? And did it have an impact on your relationship at all?
Oh, well, financially, things were pretty grim. I can't remember whether Neil owed 2 or was it 3 million. He was made bankrupt. But as he says, if you can't pay the first nought, it doesn't really matter how many noughts there are afterwards.
Tell that to Rishi Sunak.
Tell that to who?
Tell that to Rishi Sunak.
Tell that to Rishi Sunak.
With the national debt.
And yes, it was very, very tricky. I mean, I think the first year after he lost the election, which was, no, not after he lost the election, we began to make a little bit of money from the media. I mean, you know, you get paid to do Have I Got News for You and things like that. But no, times were very grim. We had very little money. I was able to earn money without the trustee in bankruptcy grabbing it, but Neil couldn't earn anything really beyond what they describe as basic subsistence. So it was quite grim, but it didn't really change our relationship at all. I mean, there were tough times, but I think I referred to it earlier. If there are problems in your marriage, something like that is going to bust it apart. But if there aren't any problems, it actually just makes you a lot closer. And I think the big difference for us, as opposed to other scandals, I don't want to rake things up and name any names, but everybody knows who they are, who've had scandals of a sexual nature where it's always the husband has strayed. Then you go back in, having faced the media, the pair of you, you go back in behind the closed door and you have this great big cloud between you because he's done it. I'm not going to name the names, but you know who I'm talking about.
Of course.
Whereas we never had that. You go back inside the door and it's you against the world, and it actually just, if there was any room for it, makes your relationship even stronger.
Now, I know you've got a lovely, lovely house, and it's quite the picture of domestic bliss, including the dog and the many grandchildren as well. What is it?
No. Where's the dog?
I thought I could hear something in the background. I thought it was a canine.
It might be my chair squeaking. No, I'm afraid we have no dog. No.
Oh, you got no dog? Well,
the cat. The cat.
You've got.
We all watched the Duke of Edinburgh's funeral together with Florence the cat on my knee. She was a stray. She came in from the farm next door, and she just settled in here. I mean, she would always wanted to be where we were. Everything. And she literally, we all got up after the funeral and we have not seen her since. I shall burst into tears.
Oh, no, I'm sorry to hear that. I hope she reappears. So you're obviously very well set up now. Did you lose your home in the end, Christine?
Well, we wanted to move anyway. We were living up in Cheshire because Neil was representing a Cheshire seat, Tatton. And when the job, we were there because it was the job. That's where he was selected for. So once the job had gone, there was no point being there. We had some good friends up there, but we have good friends all over the place. So we wanted to be nearer to London because our job was changing. It was more in the media, and if you're in the media, you need to be nearer to London. So we just were looking somewhere not too far from London, and we came across this house which had been on the market for a long time. But that's why we moved house. We had to sell. We lost quite a load of the value of that house. It didn't go to Mr. Fayed. It actually went to our lawyers because we were mortgaging it brick by brick as the court case went along. So by the time Fayed thought he could get his hands on some of the money, there was none left because he couldn't get his hands on my half, and Neil's half had already gone to the lawyers. So we lost half of that, but we've rebuilt. And
you have.
You know, when the going gets tough, the tough get going, and you just have to say this has happened. There is no point crying over what's gone. You just have to knuckle down and get on with it and make the best of the rest of your life.
Well, here you are, a bona fide national treasure, 2 decades in showbiz. I can't wait to welcome you to the studio to be on our panel when you're next in the capital. And Neil, the leader of a national political party. So you have bounced back. You're still standing. Let's get some viewer questions now. This is from Ken. They're all good. You've got lots of fans out there, Christine. Who's next in line for Prime Minister? Sunak, Hunt, Gove or Patel?
Well, I think my answer to that has to be none of the above.
Yeah. Do you think anyone's got the ability? What do you think of Boris? Do you rate Boris?
No, I'm afraid if I'd seen I've actually gone off Twitter recently. I'm on there, but I don't look at it. I got so fed up with the vindictive, horrible business. But I would have absolutely been on your Twitter poll, so it would have gone up from 81% to 81. No, I don't rate him at all, I'm afraid. I think he's a performer. He's a bit of a buffoon, really. And he got us Brexit, for those of us who wanted Brexit, which I did. By the way, Neil was a member of something called the Anti-Common Market League in 1967. So he spent his entire adult life trying to get us out of something that we weren't even in when it started. But he has not followed through. He hasn't delivered the thing. Whether it's marriage and children and the whole thing, the disaster, as I see it, of his prime ministership was summed up by that CBI speech. I mean, dear God in heaven, it was so embarrassing. I don't know. Goodness knows what's going to happen next. I have no idea who'll be the next prime minister, but I hope it's not Boris. I think we can do better than that. I hope we can do better than that.
Well, certainly here's hoping. William touched on the issue of the migrant crisis, about which you have very trenchant views. How about Colin as well? Moving on. This is in relation to I'm a Celebrity. Jungle or Castle? If you had the chance again to appear on I'm a Celebrity, which would it be?
Absolutely, no question, it would be the Jungle. I mean, I think with all due respect to Wales and Welsh castles, I mean, it just isn't right, is it, that it isn't in the Jungle? I understand why, but no, definitely. If I'd been asked to go back in, I wouldn't do it anyway. But if I'd been asked to go back in, I'd have said, well, hang on a minute, I'll wait till we can go back to Australia.
And tell me about your rather brilliant performance on that show. You were in the first series, so you didn't really know what you were getting yourself into.
No, do you know, Mark, I'm glad you've said that, because everybody knows now, roughly, what you're going to be seeing, and it all depends on who's on, whether you're interested in the people who are on and all that. But for the very first, even ITV didn't really know what was coming. They were kind of still making it up as they went along. And I tell you, I arrived in Australia and I still thought, we all thought, that it wasn't going to be 100% real. We all thought that kind of just off the set, there would be a nice, magnifying mirror with eyebrow tweezers and all that sort of thing. And we could have a nice hot shower. And so it was a bit of a shock when we began to realise, before we got dumped in there, we did begin to realise that this really was for real. And it's a lot more, in a way, it's a lot more cushy now. They're allowed to take all sorts of things in. You see them wearing bits of clothing and headgear, and we weren't allowed any of that. We could have one luxury, and I stretched it by saying, could I have a notebook and a biro, which they gave me, and it was the best thing ever, because I was A, able to keep a diary, and B, when things were getting really bad, I could put my head down into my notepad and I could write, Tony, Tony Blackburn, who won, "If you don't shut up, I shall scream. You know, will you please stop talking? I'm trying to enjoy and you could write what you couldn't say."
Yes.
But you know, I loved it. I really did. I thought it was fabulous fun. It was terrific.
And I would have thought it brought you to an even wider audience.
Well, what it did, and I did not realise, this isn't why I did it. It just was an opportunity to earn a bit of money. Nothing like what they get now, I hasten to tell you. And they asked me, first of all, in the January of that first year, and I said no, because life was quite grim. We'd got, you know, trustee in bankruptcy on our shoulders. And I just thought, do I really need the hazy thing that they told me, you know, rice and beans and snakes and all that? I thought. Anyway, they came back. They obviously hadn't got their middle-aged mother hen. I was middle-aged in those days, 20 years ago.
You still are, darling.
No. I was 72 the other day, if you can believe it.
That's incredible. You look amazing. Happy birthday.
Well, darling, it's the lighting, you know.
You do look great.
I really didn't want to do it, but I've forgotten the question.
Oh, yes. Well, did it change your... Yeah, go on.
I've remembered. Because I thought I was not the most popular woman in the country. And I thought everybody's going to hate me and it's going to be awful and I'm going to be humiliated and I'm going to come out wishing I hadn't done it. But in fact, what it did, it completely changed people's opinions, because instead of seeing me the way that the press had portrayed me, as the wife from hell and worse than Lady Macbeth and all that sort of bollocks, I'm a pussycat, not even a battle axe, for heaven's sake.
Correct.
They suddenly saw that actually I was, you know, quite nice. I was kind to animals. I was kind to other people. I'd got a sense of humour. And, you know, I was a human being. I don't think a lot of them even thought that I was. And I know from the postbag, and literally it was a postbag in those days, letters, that a lot of people felt like that. And one person, I'll never forget, I've still got it, he wrote me a letter and he said, "Christine, I sat down to watch the first episode thinking I'm really looking forward to that bloody woman having a ghastly time." And that was me. And he blah, blah, blah. And he said, "I'm now your absolute biggest fan and you've won me over." And wasn't that lovely?
Well, that was wonderful.
So,
and I am your second biggest fan. Christine, we've only got a couple of seconds left. What would you like to do next?
Oh, I just want to... It's so boring. I'm sorry. I haven't got a brilliant... I just want to enjoy...
You don't do boring.
Being
you
retired,
don't do boring.
Not being on... It is... Well, it's not boring. I mean, I've just got so many things to do in my private life. I want to catch up with my friends. I want to catch up with the younger generation. I want to do a bit more travelling. Ha, ha, COVID. I'm not going anywhere until this nonsense is sorted out.
Yeah.
So I'm afraid I don't have any great big ambitions anymore. I've jumped out of an aeroplane. I've done that.
My ambition is for you and Neil to join me on my panel on Mark Dolan tonight. Let's make it happen. My best wishes to Neil, and especially my thanks to you, Christine. A wonderful entertainer, a big character, and a true survivor. Look forward to catching up soon. The amazing,
Thank you,
wonderful...
We need a hug. We
you
need
do.
a proper
Well, listen,
hug.
Sending you a virtual hug. I'll wait for the lurgy to clear up first. There you go. I'm sure you enjoyed my conversation with Christine as much as I did. Couple of minutes to go from me, and then the brilliant Nick Dixon is stepping in to take over the show. But I will deal with one last question before I go. Is curry racist? See you in 2.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Now, I'm delighted to say there's lots to get through in the next hour and a half, but because of my voice, it's going to be the brilliant comedian and broadcaster and a very old friend of mine, Nick Dixon, who's here in a few minutes' time. But first, it's time for FAQs, in which we take a deep dive into a topic in or around the news. Tonight, South Asian food bloggers are calling for the word curry to be cancelled over claims it has links to British colonialism. A 27-year-old Californian food blogger, Kahati Bansal, has spoken out about the term in an Instagram video viewed more than 3 million times, where she claimed the word has been long misused by foreigners to describe any dish made on the Asian subcontinent. Well, joining me to discuss this and to find out whether the word curry is actually racist is the founder of the British Curry Awards. I'm delighted to say I've got the exclusive first copy of the beautiful brochure. I'm delighted to welcome Enam Ali, MBE. Hello, Enam.
Having me here,
Listen, I think you're very wise.
I think you need a curry. You need a curry. Really,
yeah,
you need a hot curry.
Does spicy food help with a sore throat?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you have a ginger curry, you will do it really nicely.
A little bit of.
If I knew, I would bring the takeaway for you.
Oh, listen, I'm going to find out. If you've got a phone number for me, I'll be using it straight after the show. Now, Enam, do you think the word curry is too general? Has this blogger got a point?
Well, I think everybody reject that her, cheap publicity for calling curry word is racist. Curry actually comes from Tamil. It's a Tamil word for curry, K-O-R-I, curry. And obviously Bangladeshi people who started this curry business, and their terms of language is called Turi Tar curry. So they actually adopted very well and become a curry is more popular in the whole world. And British curry is become a #1 in the world. Is nobody can better than us, I think, in Britain. And more popular, you will not find anywhere Madras flavor packet of crisps anywhere else in the world. So it's a great story, great success story. And curry is really not racist word at all. It's rather anti-racist. Curry actually make people friendship. If you look at the curry houses in Britain, all over the world, even this country, it does a really vital role to make people more friendly and sitting together, sharing the curry. So curry is not the racist in any means.
In fact, the popularity of curry in the United Kingdom demonstrates how outward-looking this country is, which, of course, it has been throughout its history.
True. If you look at the history, chicken tikka masala is one national dish and now is global dish. If you go to any hotel in the 5-star, you will find chicken tikka masala, not from India. I always said curry may be born in India, but we're making it great in Britain. And nobody can beat that. All the Michelin star chef is in Britain. So we are the best in the whole world. And we will make better curry than any other country, even though India or Pakistan or Bangladesh, because our chefs are so amazing. In London, all of the restaurants, even the British Curry Award is taking place in Monday, and you will see the showcasing their talent and their skill is unbelievable.
So you think that the best curry on the planet does not come from Pakistan or India, it comes from the United Kingdom?
Exactly, absolutely. I will anytime I will challenge to anybody to see their, the dish they have created, and it's really amazing. Even this year, I see some of the talented chefs who are Michelin star chefs, they come up with the concept. It's keeping the originality, and the plating such a way is just amazing, to just like a picture story of the food. Forget about the eating the food. And you just look at this year, maybe whenever I announce some of the winner of London restaurant, you will find really amazing to see their talent, their skill is just beyond.
Yeah. And why do you think British people are so fond of curry?
I think it's a long history. 1810, first curry house has been opened in London. Yeah, and it's been on, and then 60s, curry wasn't popular. And it was evolving the curry houses because 75% of the menu was English dish. And on that basis, a lot of things evolved, like a prawn puri. It was come from prawn cocktail. And onion bhaji come from onion ring. So it's a lot of things you have evolved in the British. If you go to Bombay and you ask for, or Mumbai, and you ask for Bombay aloo, they all might say, oh, what are you talking about? But Bombay aloo is here. It was the potato, actually alternative to French fry or chips. So it's so many things, the story behind the curry houses in Britain. And now, all over the world trying to copy. The chicken tikka masala, you go to hotel in all over the world, and you will find it's British tikka masala, but without the recognition of the people who actually innovated or invented their hard work, without any recognition. So because of that, we thought it need to be recognized, the people, even though a lot of people we lost in pandemic and also over the year, but we salute them. Their contribution we'll never forget. Because of them, we are here, and hundreds of people are enjoy in this curry house, in Britain. On the top of that, the flavor of, you go to sandwiches, you'll find tikka masala flavor. You go to supermarket, full of curries. Yeah. It's unbelievable. I will never find anywhere, even you go to India, you go to supermarket, you will not find something, variety of the rices, the curry and everything. It makes me feel so proud and honored for my first generation.
I think it is truly one of the best aspects of British cuisine is our enthusiasm for these remarkable Asian dishes. Tell me why you set up the British Curry Awards. How long have they been going for?
It's been 17 years, and I always feel that people have to be recognized their hard work, even though it was too late. I started 2005, and a lot of people I couldn't able to meet them because they are the champion, and they did so much. But we did salute them and honor them, and still I thought we haven't paid enough debts. That is almost 4.6 billion pound of contribution to the treasury in this country. And just alone, the curry houses in Britain, 4.6 billion. On the top of that, if you look at the counterpart, the drink we sell, the other product we sell, the vegetable, the other grocery, even more than that. So it hasn't been recognized, hasn't been sent anybody, nor India said thank you to us, nor Bangladesh to thank you to us. No one thank you to us. So I thought it is important we should start it ourselves. That's something we can recognize people who are contributing. But now we find that people in the local community and the public right across the country, they have nominated their favorite restaurant, and it become a curry Oscar. It's like now a whole nation knew the curry Oscar taking place on Monday. We feel so honored and privileged to have this and have a red carpet and all, razzmatazz for 1,600 people together and getting the best person to recognize and tell them, well done, thank you, you've done a fantastic job. On the top of that, Mark, I must mention, the first generation, what they've done, we never ever able to replace them, what they've done. Yes. Because of then, even the papadum, because of their signature, because of their innovation, you will not even qualify to call yourself Indian restaurant. Because papadum wasn't sold in India for purpose of appetizer. It was just another, casual time people eat as a papadum. But with my grandfather generation, when they said, we didn't have it back home, any appetizer. Because of when you go to any French restaurant or English restaurant, the first thing you get, bread and butter. And we didn't have that. So the replacement of the bread and butter was a papadum. And then they come up with the chutney. So he was born here, and then they become an onion bhaji, came up, and onion bhaji also come from onion ring. Prawn cocktail was replacement of prawn puri.
Wow.
So everything has an amazing history. Bombay aloo is actually replacement of the chips because the people are fed up with it. Say, oh, come on, I don't want any more half and half rice and half chips. Come on, do something with the potato. So the history of Britain, of the British curry industry, has got its own right cuisine. And we are campaigning for that, to around the world to promote British curry has own right cuisine. So we are celebrating every year, 1st of December, that make sure we salute them, tribute them, and tell the story. Curry is not come from India. This curry is not come from any other country. It is from Britain. And it is something amazing. And we are a global demand of the tikka masala. No other curry can beat that. Even chicken jal furji is not the similar. If you go to India or Bangladesh or Pakistan, you'll not find the same one. I can guarantee that our one is the best.
You're making me hungry. Now, the clock is against us, Enam. A couple of quick ones, if you may. How much have Indian restaurants suffered during the pandemic? And also, is it true that there is a shortage of Indian chefs?
Yeah, it was very shortage in the beginning. I would say about last 5-6 years, I was doing a campaigning for, to relax some rule, which the government has done. Present government has done. We are very grateful to them. And we can able to bring chef, in this country now. It wasn't possible for maybe just to last year or just, year before. And now you can able to bring chef. Any restaurateur can bring their own chef from India or Pakistan or Dubai or anywhere else. It wasn't possible before. And now I think the problem happened because of the Brexit. Post-Brexit has causing a more problem for my counterpart. We are not maybe suffering as much as perhaps the hotel and other, because there used to be huge number of people from EU is to support the hospitality, the front of house and back of house. Even we're suffering now in the front of house rather than back of house, because there's a big number of staff work actually from the EU, and there's been quite a supportive for whole industry in this country, especially hotels, especially the restaurant and so on. But now it's very difficult, and our children, they do not want to become a waiter. They don't want to becoming a chef. They want to be a star like you. They want to be a barrister. They want to be a lawyer, and they want to be only work for part-time. So we're having a real difficulties in here for the shortage of staff, not only for my sector. I'm talking about generally all over the country. I was talking to some hotelier, and they're also sharing with me that because they're having a big problem with their staff.
Are some, because I love my local curry house so much, but are some Indian restaurants a bit out of date? Do they need to raise their game?
I think it's a good thing to have a variety of restaurants in this country. I really enjoy when I go. It's difficult to find one to the restaurant where small restaurant with the flock wallpaper, red carpet, with the old days, remind me 1960s and 70s restaurant. I really want to preserve them. It is a good thing to go and enjoy those restaurants with the Indian sitar music on, and is one maybe something very old. It reminds me that old traditional Indian curry house in Britain. But it's disappearing because of the first generation are not remaining in this business, and the new generation not engaging the business. Having said that, some of the restaurant is coming up with amazing, innovation and making a kind of Indian food is very different scene, and people enjoying is different way of, casual dining, innovative restaurant, all those things. So it's a different, kind of, and you will not find any different from any restaurant. So Indian restaurant not regarded as a second-class restaurant anymore. So even they are champion, I think, the more Indian restaurant in Britain than New Delhi and Bombay together.
Well, if you want to find out more about this amazing event, 7 years old, celebrating amazing curries in this country, it is, of course, the rather highly respected British Curry Awards. Just go to britishcurryawards.org, or you can find them on Twitter at Brit Curry Awards. My sincere thanks to Enam Ali, MBE, for joining us, the founder of those awards. Now, I think you'll agree, my voice has conked out, and it could just be that I'm watching the show tomorrow rather than presenting it. I'll miss you hugely, as I will for the second half of tonight's show. We've got the news agenda coming up, and my good friend, comedian and broadcaster Nick Dixon is going to take over. Nick, it's all yours.
Thanks, Mark. I have to say, he sounded terrible, didn't he? You sound terrible, Mark, but what a trooper. Well done. I should have come in a bit sooner.
I think so. An hour ago.
That would have been ideal. All right. Cheers, mate. Get better soon.
Thanks.
We'll bring you tomorrow's headlines tonight and front pages at 11 p.m. I'll be joined by Rebecca Jane, Peter Edwards, John Gaunt and Mike Parry after the break.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
All right, it's time now to look at the headlines which are breaking and what will be in tomorrow's news. Tonight in our news agenda. So joining me now in my incredible panel, we've got author Rebecca Jane, Peter Edwards, former editor of Labourist, writer and commentator John Gaunt, and Mike Parry, journalist and broadcaster. So, face coverings will become mandatory again in shops and on public transport in England from next week under a raft of measures to target the new COVID variant, Omicron, the PM has said. PCR tests for everyone entering the UK will be introduced, and all contacts of new variant cases will have to self-isolate, even if fully jabbed. But Boris said Christmas would be considerably better than 2020.
UK is in a much, much stronger position, and it's in order to retain that strong position that we're taking the sensible precautionary steps that we're taking today. And I continue to, I repeat what I said about my formula about Christmas, that I have every reason to think that it will be considerably better, David, than last year.
All right, so that's Boris saying Christmas will be considerably better, which could just mean you get a better mountain bike. I don't know. But does it feel like we're taking a step backwards with this? I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe we should go to John on this. I was speaking to John before the show, and he seemed to be really... You had a lot to say about Boris.
Well, it couldn't be much worse than last Christmas, could it? So he's not making a very big promise there. But in his defence, I would say, Nick, I thought he got a bit more of his mojo back today. I listened to it on the radio driving down the M40, and I think he's right. He's had to do something. I'm one of the people who criticised him when he dithered and delayed, didn't get rid of the Cheltenham Festival, the big football match in Liverpool, and then didn't stop the flights from Milan or even Wuhan. So this time, he's seen this and he's decided to act straight away. And he is acting more like a leader. He's basically saying, bang, that's it. We're not having these flights from these places. You will wear a mask on the tube, which, by the way, I agree with, and on buses. And he is saying now, we've got to be more responsible. And it's not some great plan. Forget all these conspiracy people you have on here. It's not some terrible, terrible plan to lock us all down. And it's a way of avoiding that lockdown. If people were just a little bit more sensible, a little bit more responsible, and if they got vaxxed, I cannot understand why there's so many people, there's not so many, is it? But so many people who don't want to be vaccinated. What are they scared of? A little prick?
Oh, edgy from John. So, all right, so usual forthright opinions from John. So John's gone very sort of, you think he's a strong leader, he's Kim Jong-un, he's gone full Trump and he's being strong. What do you think, Rebecca? You're shaking your head, you're sceptical.
I lost respect for Boris Johnson a long time ago.
Yeah, when was that?
Probably, well, it was not long after he got COVID and we were all out on the front doorstep clapping for how wonderful he'd done. After then, he just seemed to go downhill. Yeah. He's constant indecisions and going backwards and forwards on various things, making these promises. He's doing the same thing again, promising Christmas is going to be fine. It's not. It's not. He's just going to come up with something else next week. And you know when I really lost respect for him, and I'll start on your vaccine thing in a second, when I really lost respect for him was when he flew to COP26, a climate protest. Who on earth is advising this man?
Yeah.
It's absolute nonsense.
It's hypocritical.
No, let me just tell you, what's worse than that was he flew back from that to go to the Garrett Club to eat and, you know, have all the wine and all the rest of it. That's true. But when the press criticised him, when he went back up, he went up on a train. That's what makes me mad. And I'm not a Boris fan. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying. I think he's handled COVID pretty badly.
Useless.
OK, so, I mean, I sort of resent the whole idea that we can just cancel Christmas at the whim of the government. What do you think, Peter?
Well, no one's suggesting that Christmas is going to be cancelled,
No.
but I think it was the right thing to do last year. And I suspect John and I may not agree on much, but I think there was massive dither and delay last year, and the government have learned a lesson from that.
Yeah.
The worry is now that there's a struggle between public safety measures and the ideological libertarian instincts of people in government. We also know this week the advisors seem to be falling out among themselves over who's making rude remarks about Boris in the newspapers. So I think it is a bit of a battle between public safety, which I believe Boris Johnson does take seriously because he's had the virus, one of many reasons.
It depends. Some of the internet says he hasn't, but you believe he had it.
Please don't believe everything or even much of what you read on the internet. But I think they're in a battle internally between public safety measures and listening to people like Sage and some of their libertarian instincts. And ultimately, you know, this week is December the 1st. No one really knows what's going to happen at Christmas. Remember, in the small print today, it said this will be reviewed in 3 weeks' time.
OK, well, I mean, I think I have the libertarian instincts that you don't seem to share. What do you think, Mike? What do you think about the whole press conference? Boris?
I thought the press conference was impressive. I agree with everybody who said that he seemed to regain some prime ministerial powers. The Peppa Pig delivery will be forgotten about in another week. I mean, I've almost forgotten about it now, you know what I mean? I'm glad he promoted a British company, a very successful British company. But I think what we all got to remember is that last time the government didn't act quickly, they were criticised. Now they're acting quickly and they're being criticised. It had to be done, but look at what all the scientists are saying, including Whitty today, and they are saying that because we're so far ahead of the game on the double and triple vaccination, we are massively well prepared to ward off the worst excesses of any new variant, including this one. I know it's got 50 mutations, but the scientists who I've been listening to today said with an odd tweak here, an odd tweak there, with the AstraZeneca, vaccination, we should be absolutely perfectly able to protect ourselves in a way that the rest of Europe and the rest of the world can't. We're in a very good position. I feel good.
And do you agree with the thing that Chris Whitty allegedly said, although he then downplayed that he actually did say it today, which is that there wouldn't be as much compliance this time if we even did bring in restrictions?
Well, yeah, I do, because, again, one or two of our panellists have said, is Christmas going to be ruined again? I do believe there'll be a compliance problem, but having said that, I think we've now had such a long time of having to do the things that we do, like wearing masks, which I definitely don't object to. There'll be a compliance problem if it becomes onerous, but I do not think it's onerous to be asked to wear a mask when you're on a bus or a train or a tube train. I don't think that is onerous.
And also, don't mistake Twitter for the real world, because Twitter is not the real world. So all the keyboard warriors, this stops when we say it stops, we're not going to comply and all this, it's all garbage. Ordinary people will put their masks on because they do want Christmas. And
I'm
Boris is more
ordinary
in
and I'm not
tune
doing it.
with, well, that's up to you.
I
You're one
never
person.
mistake Twitter for the real world because people hate me on Twitter, but no.
And in the real world.
No, I'm joking.
Compliance, by the way, is about closing down pubs. That's what we're talking about.
Well,
between now and Christmas. The compliance issue is, what? Are we going to be told we can only drink in pubs outside in the cold or only go in and sit down with a meal? That's the main issue that we're talking about with compliance.
Thanks, Mike. I've got to stop you because we've got to go to a break. I mean, I disagree with you about masks, but who cares about me? Coming up, we'll bring you tomorrow's front pages, but first, the weather.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking to get off to a cold, frosty and in places icy start. Let's take a look at the details. Cornwall and the far west of Devon will start Sunday rather cloudy with some showers feeding in from the north. Elsewhere across southwest England it will be dry and fairly clear but frosty. Southeast England will also be holding on to a fair amount of cloudy and breezy weather, although most places should start the day dry here. Across Wales, there will be a few showers towards the west, but much of the country will be dry with fairly clear skies and a fairly widespread frost. The northwest of England will begin Sunday dry, clear and frosty too, and after the very windy weather that we saw on Saturday, the northerly breeze will finally have eased down. A few showers will continue to filter into the northeast of England, one or two of which could be wintry. However, further inland it will be much clearer. Icy stretches are expected in some parts. Outbreaks of rain and snow will affect northern and some central parts of Scotland, and although clearer skies are likely further south, there will be generally a lot more frost and some ice around. Across Northern Ireland, cloud will be spreading in from the west and there'll be the odd patch of light rain. That cloud should begin to lift the temperatures a little though. Through Sunday morning there'll be some showery rain and local snow, mainly across northern and eastern areas. Elsewhere, sunnier weather is likely. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. In a moment, we'll be taking a look at tomorrow's front pages and also going through today's big stories and tomorrow's headlines in the news agenda with my panel, Rebecca Jane, Peter Edwards, John Gorn and Mike Perry. But next, it's the news headlines.
Hello, I'm Karen Roberts. These are your headlines at 11 o'clock. Face coverings will again become mandatory in shops and on public transport. New measures are being introduced after 2 people in the UK tested positive for the new Omicron variant of COVID. Those who've been in close contact with someone who's tested positive with the strain must self-isolate for 10 days. Travellers arriving in the UK will need to quarantine until they have a negative PCR test. The government is also fast-tracking the booster vaccine programme in a bid to curb the spread of Omicron.
It does appear that Omicron spreads very rapidly and can be spread between people who are double vaccinated. There is also a very extensive mutation, which means it diverges quite significantly from previous configurations of the virus, and as a result it might, at least in part, reduce the protection of our vaccines over time.
3 people have been killed as Storm Arwen brought winds of up to 100 miles an hour. More than 100,000 homes have suffered power cuts across the UK. Amber and yellow weather warnings remain in place. The Met Office are advising people to avoid any unnecessary travel. Priti Patel is warning the UK cannot tackle the migrant crisis alone. The Home Secretary fears that failure to cooperate with Europe on the issue will lead to worse scenes than the deadly capsizing in the Channel this week. Ms Patel was speaking after she was disinvited by France to a meeting with her European counterparts to discuss the issue. It's after Boris Johnson enraged French President Emmanuel Macron by publicly sharing a letter the Prime Minister had written to him. Merseyside police have released an image of a van that they're searching for as part of the investigation into the fatal stabbing of 12-year-old Ava White in Liverpool. Officers believe key witnesses may have been travelling in the silver vehicle. 4 teenage boys aged between 13 and 15 have been arrested on suspicion of murder. Former England cricket captain Michael Vaughan says he's sorry for the hurt caused to his former teammate Azim Rafiq. Earlier this month, Mr Rafiq told MPs he faced institutional racism at Yorkshire Cricket Club. Michael Vaughan was among a number of figures implicated in the case, but he denies the claims. That's it. You're right up to date. Now, back to Nick Dixon.
It's just after 11 p.m. We'll continue with the news agenda in a moment. At this time every night, we bring you the first look at tomorrow's front pages, hot off the press. So we got the Daily Star, the mask is back. Reports the Daily Star, mask will be mandatory in shops and on public transport. That's if people actually do it. Contacts of the new variant must self-isolate and international arrivals will have to quarantine if they test negative. The Sunday Express reports on the same story. They report there's fears the new Omicron variant could evade the vaccines. The Telegraph also leads with the new COVID measures. In a separate story, however, the paper reports people smugglers told the family of a migrant who drowned in the English Channel on Wednesday that their loved one had arrived safely. So the Independent reports the UK is in a much stronger position than earlier in the pandemic. That's what the Prime Minister insists. Boris is also making moves to expand the booster vaccines to the under 40s. The Sunday Times says Christmas plans are thrown into doubt as the new COVID variant arrives in the UK. The Prime Minister says the new rules will be reviewed in 3 weeks. Mask up, even you, Boris, reports the Mirror. Yeah, Boris not so good at masking, is he? The paper also reports on the new COVID rules to slow the spread of the new variant. The Mail on Sunday reports the woke mob, that's very Mail, are trying to ban Christmas. It reports civil servants have blocked the word Christmas from efforts to avert a winter COVID crisis as they fear it would offend minority religions. So it's time to look at which headlines are breaking and what will be in tomorrow's news tonight in our news agenda. So former England cricket captain Michael Vaughan has apologised for the hurt Azim Rafiq has gone through. He apologised for historic tweets from 2010, but when asked whether he made any racist comments during his time at Yorkshire Cricket Club, he again denied the allegations.
I've said from the minute that this has been talked about that Yorkshire have dealt with it terribly. They avoided it. They thought it was going to go away. They were stubborn into thinking that this wasn't going to come out. And for that, you know, I can apologise on behalf of an ex-Yorkshire player. I always believe that when you're a Yorkshire player, you're always a Yorkshire player. The important aspect of a dressing room is culture, and it has to be inclusive. And I feel throughout my whole time, I can look back and I honestly believe that it was inclusive, but I'm more than happy for someone to come and have a conversation with me to say that it wasn't.
All right, so cricket has been through a lot recently. I feel like we've had blackface, we've had anti-Semitism. So what do you lot think? Who should we bring in on this? Let's say Mike Parry. I feel like you'll have an opinion on the whole cricket scandal that keeps happening.
Yeah, Azeem Rafiq says he holds no grudge against Michael Vaughan, and he hasn't yet specifically proven what he claims Michael Vaughan said some nearly 10 years ago, OK, on the Yorkshire cricket field. Michael Vaughan was captain of Yorkshire when they first started taking players on their staff who were born outside of Yorkshire, including some of the greatest cricketers from the Asian world ever, OK? I've worked with Michael Vaughan a lot. I don't know what that conversation was between Michael Vaughan and Azeem Rafiq and the other Asian players, but I've seen Michael Vaughan representing himself today, and I do honestly believe the issue of innocent until proven guilty has not been given enough credence in this situation. And it's interesting to know and to see that there's now, within our business, the broadcasting business, there's pressure on the BBC to row back on this mass ban that they've tried to introduce on Michael Vaughan for something that's been alleged but not yet fully investigated.
But is it a mass ban or is it a suspension? Because I think Vaughan has...
It's a mass ban to all intents and purposes, Peter. We're talking about an Ashes series here, and he's not going to be able to work in an Ashes series. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, but that's not as a sanction because he's denied the comment, and so we bear that in mind, that, as you say, it's not been proven yet. The apology today is for something else, the stuff on Twitter. But I think the BBC had a little choice. If he's at the heart of a story, because he's in the Yorkshire dressing room, he denies some of the allegations, to then comment on basically the biggest cricket event in the world at the same time.
Yes.
I think the BBC haven't made a finding of guilt. They've made a finding of we need to look into it and get back to it because it's so serious. So I think that's the right thing to do for now, and the best thing they can do.
Are you saying because he's involved in the story, he can't then comment on the story? Is that
was their justification. I think that is a sound one, but that has to be time limited because the suspension, obviously, the longer it goes on, it does become a ban. But I don't think it's fair to call it a ban yet.
Azeem Rafiq has rowed back on it, hasn't he? He said that I don't bear any grudges. So, you know, initially we thought this is something that had damaged Azeem Rafiq's life. He's now saying, well, it didn't actually.
Well, no. You're collating two different things. It has damaged his life, and we've seen Azeem Rafiq look very distressed. He's saying a separate thing about he doesn't bear a grudge against Vaughan. But I think Azeem Rafiq...
But it wasn't the main issue anyway, was it? It was nowhere near the main issue in Azeem Rafiq's complaints about the way he was treated at Yorkshire Cricket Club. It was very minor in the list of complaints that Azeem Rafiq made about Yorkshire Cricket Club.
Well, I don't think that's right. I think dressing room culture was at the heart of what Azeem Rafiq alleged.
It wasn't even in the dressing room, actually. It was out in the field. But I know, I'm not being pedantic, but I know...
Well, that's it. Just, I know you got me wrong, but there was one particular incident. It was the one on the field where Vaughan was seen shaking hands, I think, with four players, either from Asian countries or British Asians of Pakistani ancestry. But then there's a much bigger issue over many years that Azeem Rafiq was talking about, which was dressing room culture. And that's why I think ultimately...
I think Michael Vaughan's been treated very unfairly, basically.
But it's going to end up with Yorkshire publishing the report that they've sat on so far because there are so many questions unanswered. And I think there is ultimately... I have a lot of sympathy for Azeem Rafiq, and I think the public and the cricketing community...
I have a lot of sympathy for Azeem Rafiq.
...does as well.
Absolutely.
So Yorkshire are going to have to publish the report.
I hope they will.
Otherwise, it becomes an...
I hope they will.
Yeah. Well, let's bring in the other side in this slightly awkward table set. What do you think, John?
I just think it's totally unpleasant, the whole thing. You can never condone racism at all. He's made these serious allegations. Yorkshire obviously tried to cover it up, brush it under the carpet. They were wrong to do so. It's interesting, Mike talks about he can remember when they first took on players who weren't born in Yorkshire. I can remember that as well, Mike, and that was nothing to do with the colour of the skin. Yorkshire's had this problem. Cricket has obviously got some problem.
But sorry, John, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that included them taking on Asian players for the first time under Michael Vaughan's captaincy.
We've accepted your point. But my point about this is that let's sort it out and let's move on. Let's do the Nelson Mandela thing where we actually have truth and reconciliation rather than a witch hunt. I do feel sorry for Vaughan. I feel sorry also for Azeem. But there's a lot of nonsense going on, and the longer it goes on, the worse it will get, because we want cricket to be a game that everybody can play, men, women, whatever race, whatever ethnic background. The real fault for this lies with the Yorkshire Committee,
without doubt,
who were not willing to accept they had a problem. There was a problem. That doesn't have to be a problem go forward. We don't need to ban every... I mean, for God's sake, we won't have a cricket team the way we're going, the way everyone's getting implicated. And all this nonsense in the paper about whether Asim had gambling debts and all the rest of it, it's all deeply unpleasant.
Does anyone... Well, bring you in, Rebecca, but does anyone care about the fact that Rafiq had made these anti-Semitic messages in the past? Does that matter? Or comment on that or any aspect of this?
No, they're horrendous.
What I'm going to comment on is that I don't feel sorry for Vaughan in the slightest, because what we've just seen there is no responsibility being taken. And when you don't take any responsibility... Mike, I'm coming back to you. You said that they're unproven allegations.
Yeah.
3 people have come forward and said what you said. Are we calling them a liar?
No, but there hasn't been an inquiry into what they said.
3
it hasn't been looked
people
at.
are not going to stand up in the media and the public eye and lie.
Rebecca, if 50 people came forward, you've got to have a process of inquiry into what they're saying. Otherwise...
One voice is as important as 50.
Rebecca, how do you know they're not just friends supporting each other? That's why there's got to be a proper inquiry.
Absolutely do not believe that anybody will make the allegations that they have made that are untrue in the media and the public
You would hope not, but, you know, human nature dictates it sometimes goes the other way.
This is where racism starts and is infiltrated throughout the whole system, is when somebody like yourself sits on a programme and says, but we need to question it. No, actually.
We do need to question it.
No, we don't need to question it.
You do have to have an inquiry.
Yeah,
of course you do.
It's about a fair process. It's about a fair process, which is completely in line with British values, to have a fair process when accusations are made.
Yeah. We're also, right, because they took him out of the Ashes coverage.
We're actually literally saying indirectly that we don't believe them.
No, we're not. We're saying we want to find the truth. We want to find the truth, for goodness sake.
Is impartial.
And you're saying, let's not bother finding the truth. Let's take the word of 3 people.
Absolutely.
I mean, crikey, this is a man's career and whole character on trial.
Accept it.
Where does that lead to? So say somebody is a rapist, they serve their time, and then they get accused of rape again. You say, he's a rapist. Let's lock him up. Let's hang him.
Yeah, we do have innocent
Literally, you are calling these 3 people liars.
No one's calling them liars.
Rebecca, that's nonsense. Every judge, every solicitor in the land would say that is wrong. There's a point of a fair process. That's the most basic British value. You have an allegation and you investigate it. And I think you and I have...
He's also actually apologised, hasn't he? But then he also then goes on and does this interview where he takes no responsibility.
No, he's apologised for the hurt that
they've been caused. If he's done nothing wrong and he's not said why would he apologise?
He's been as generous as he possibly can in a situation where he has said, I didn't do it, I'm innocent, I really feel for the boy's pain, there should be an investigation into it.
So what is he apologising for?
Cool, can I clarify
He's
that?
apologising for the racism which is proven at Yorkshire Cricket Club when Michael Vaughan was captain, but he's denying that he was part of it.
The comments that he has directly said to those 3 people.
I don't want to where have trial by Twitter or trial by the tabloids is wrong. The worst person in the world, accused of the worst crimes in the world, they still deserve a fair trial, a fair investigation, and they deserve to be, in a legal sense, judged by 12 good men and women true. That's the way we work in Britain.
Well,
otherwise, we start having a lynch mob, Rebecca.
We've got to move on, but it was brave of Rebecca to stand up to these 3 white men. The Brexit feud over licences to fish between the Brits and French has escalated after French fishermen temporarily blockaded the port of Calais and the Channel Tunnel yesterday. The temporary blockade was put in place to interrupt transport of goods between France and the UK, amid the French last week claiming they were still awaiting 150 licences from Britain and the Channel Islands. Britain, however, says the only vessels without licences are those without proof they've worked in UK waters in recent years. So this is this fishing thing that keeps escalating. We already covered it on the other show, Headliners. It's all kicked off. They blocked some of our imports. We said you can't have your licences. They said, well, we're blocking the Channel Tunnel then. Maybe go to Peter first. I don't think we've been to you first. So what do you think about this fishing? Is it fishy?
I think it's self-inflicted. If only there was some kind of institution where you could work with the rest of Europe and
see where this is going.
Have a common policy and sort out your disagreements without going on Twitter. We could maybe call it a union.
Right, so you're saying it's all about Brexit, Mike?
Well, I'm saying it's all about Macron punishing us for Brexit because we came out and nobody's yet got round to the fact that Angela Merkel will soon be stepping down and Macron wanted to step up as the leader of Europe. He thought he'd got it over the new German leader because it's a coalition of 12 parties, and he is absolutely horrified that we've walked away from his United States of Europe and he's going to punish us and punish us. He's picked the wrong industry, by the way. The fishing industry represents less than 1% of the British economy. So it's not really going to cause us ructions, and we're not going to send the Navy in to rescue that part of the industry. What we do want is for him to scrap all this horrendous red tape he's putting in the way of trade between the United Kingdom, a free and independent United Kingdom, and the rest of Europe. It's petty, it's stupid, and in the end, he'll be the loser.
Yeah, well, people say he's done it for political purposes, but then the French will say it was cruel to ban delay the licences for the fishermen. What do you think, John?
I think Peter needs a lesson in history. When we were part of the European Union, Peter, the European Union and the French didn't act fair over fish on many, many occasions. It's not the first time they've blockaded ports.
That's not what I said, old chap.
First time they've set fire, say, for a lamb to lorries full of lamb. So it is Macron posturing. He is trying to improve his position. However, Boris also has to take some of the blame because this wasn't sorted out. In Brexit, this bit was horrid. It even goes further back to Theresa May, if you look at the history of this, because she was trying to give us Brexit in name only. Boris came in, tried to sort it, didn't sort it, which is why we've got the problem with the Northern Ireland Protocol and also the problem with fishing.
But John, you've come round to my view.
With those two largely. And also, the worst thing about this whole fishing thing, we live on an island, but hardly any of us eat any blooming fish. Most of our fish ends up in Spain and in France anyway. That's what we should be addressing because we should be eating it, especially our shellfish. That's hard to say. But so I think, we need to look at it more holistically. It's the same with the migrant question.
But that's Brexit and government failure. I think you're saying something similar to me, that it's Brexit and then government failure that have brought us to this position.
Yeah, no, but you were suggesting that when we were in the union, in your snarky little... I don't mean that nastily. In the way you said it, that everything would be OK if we were still in the EU.
Oh, no, I didn't say that at all.
With our lamb and
I didn't say everything was OK in the EU.
Before, Peter. Just a history lesson. Anyway,
history lesson.
Well, I was alive
Let's
in
let Rebecca speak.
I can't remember.
These lads are kicking off again. What do you think, Rebecca?
I think it's more Boris not getting the job done.
Yeah.
Like I say, I've got absolutely no faith in the guy anymore, and it doesn't surprise me that we're having more Brexit farce fallout. And also, the whole French thing. There's so much ego in this, saying that we're going to be able to bring Britain to their knees. Oh, get lost.
Thank you for not swearing there.
The French are cheating anyway on these fishing licences because all these French boats are now trying to fish in waters which are rich in fish, right? Where they claim they've been fishing for the last 6 years, but they can't produce a piece of paper. The captain of the ship can't do it to say he was fishing there before. They're breaking the rules, not us.
Well, Eric Zemmour, the French journalist in The Spectator, said that the French has been fishing there for generations. He was saying it's very cruel to... You don't agree?
Not the boats now that are claiming they did fish there. They're different boats, believe me. The captains of these boats are saying, I've been here forever. They haven't. They haven't even got a licence.
Have you been on them, Mike?
Sorry?
Have you been on them?
Have I been on the boats, the fishing boats? No. I was on a fishing boat once, but it wasn't that one.
He's stand in for Captain Birdseye.
You want to send him back?
Captain Pugwash, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Stop there.
All right, it seems to be a natural point to end. Maybe we should do the next one. We've all sort of vaguely disagreed on that. So the next story we've got is an 18-year-old TikToker. Very different story, this. Fabiola Baglieri has found fame for her makeup transformation videos. But it comes with a twist. The TikToker has been cruelly nicknamed Mr. Bean's daughter.
Oh, dear.
So do we have something on this? Here. Makeup tutorials, and her transformations are so unbelievable, they've caused a stir in the comments. One user commented, I can't trust girls. I think he meant because their makeup looks so different. Whilst another wrote, guys always say they can't trust how girls look if you wear makeup, but are the first to say you should wear makeup. So the hypocrisy of men. So we can maybe we'll go to Rebecca first finally, not in a sexist way, but no, who knows these days, Mike. But Is it?
That's unconscious sexism. Isn't
Well,
it?
that's my question.
Yes,
I know.
it
No, it was very
There you go. He identified,
Yeah.
self-identified as a woman. Did you notice when he said that's these three men? She stood up bravely to these three white men.
Well, because
so what are you identifying as?
You all told me your pronouns before the show. I've chosen to go with Rebecca. She may or may not know about it.
Go on,
just
Rebecca.
because we hadn't been to her first yet. That's all it was. Everyone's the same.
Yeah, all right.
Really?
What do you think, Rebecca? Because the question is it's like when you have these extreme makeup transformations, you could just look like a completely different person.
Yeah, leave the girl alone. If that's what she wants for confidence, let her be. You know, what on earth do you want to say? It's true, women can't win. We're too made up, we're not done enough. And I'll tell you something now, it doesn't matter what comes out of my mouth. There'll be God knows how many comments on social media attacking me for the way that I look tonight. So
Why? I think you look fantastic. Why would anybody attack you?
Most of them will be against me, I think. But
however, yeah, the last debate that we had about stockpiling, the amount of absolute ridiculous comments about that she's stockpiling loo roll in her lips. Leave me alone. Let me do what I want to do.
Stockpiling loo roll in her lips?
Yeah, we had a conversation about stockpiling.
Absolutely.
I said that I've got enough loo roll. He wanted to stockpile a bit more.
Absolutely,
So
yeah.
they attacked me
Gotta be
for the way that I
prepared.
looked.
Yeah.
We were talking about loo roll.
Rebecca, can I ask you, are you an influencer? Amongst the many other things you do in your very successful
What do you
life?
want to define as an influencer?
Do you pass your opinions on to other females, probably younger than yourself, and try and help them to guide the way they live their lives? Because you've been very successful in your life. You could be an influencer. Are you one?
No.
Oh, OK.
OK.
Have you ever thought about it?
Rich
I
debate.
do what I do and I hope for the best. But thank you, Mike, for all the compliments.
That's OK.
What do you think, Peter? Have you ever been on a date and then the person shows up, they look completely different without the makeup? I'm just improvising here. I've got no idea.
I think the last thing your viewers want to hear about is my private life and dates. But I think going back to the video, don't be nasty to people on Twitter. I think that's something we can all agree on. Don't write nasty comments on social media. I think that rule applies in every walk of life.
Yeah, well, people said you look like Mr. Bean's daughter, which was a little bit harsh. Do you have anything on this, John? Anything?
Well, only I don't think Rebecca will get attacked too much. I'm sure she will, because I know how vicious they can be on Twitter. But, you know, with me and Mike on the panel and Peter, we're going to get a lot of attack as well. So don't worry about it. We do need to be nicer on Twitter. We do need to get rid of anonymous accounts. That will stop this kind of nonsense, this absolute savagery on there, and especially to young women. I've got two young women daughters, and I don't. Some of the things. Well, they've come off it because it's so vicious.
Yeah.
It is.
Very wise.
I can tell you something now. I can tell you, even before social media and Twitter, a lot of people who met me on a date were very disappointed when I turned up.
For very different reasons.
You called me a token lefty earlier, but you were polite enough to insult me to my face, so I'm very appreciative.
I haven't
of that.
insulted you. I haven't insulted you at all. Well, token lefty, that's just saying that, you know, the others are these are all terribly right-wing. All right, coming up in the news agenda.
Hang on, define yourself, don't define me.
We're moving on. We're moving on, John. It was banter. Coming up in the news agenda, should we ban...
That's a dangerous word.
should we ban private healthcare? Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer hinted he would do so if he becomes Prime Minister.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else. I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Welcome back. Let's return to which headlines are breaking and what will be in tomorrow's news tonight in our news agenda. Yeah. So Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer, you've heard of him, hinted he would ban private healthcare if he becomes Prime Minister. Speaking to a political podcast, he suggested a phased-out approach and improving the NHS so people feel they don't need to default to paying for better medical care. And here's what he said.
You stop the use of private medicine?
I don't think you could just stop it in one go like that, but you do need more resources. We need to rethink health.
We'd be a better country if people were going private, not going two-tier.
Well, we'd be a better country if we dealt with health upstream, preventative measures in the community, much better use of technology in our hospitals, and a proper 10-year plan for the NHS with appropriate funding would be a much better discussion about the NHS than the extent to how much needs to be private or not.
But, there'll be people listening who just say, well, hold on, I'm paying twice. I pay my taxes and I pay my insurance. Why does he object to that?
Well, look, this is almost like the discussion about private schools. I want the NHS and I want our school system to be so good that nobody feels that they need to go private in the first place.
All right, so that's Keir Starmer talking about the NHS. He wants to phase out private healthcare. I mean, we're not communists, or are we, Peter?
Well, I don't think he has said he wants to phase out private healthcare. I think in quite a circular discussion, he said something very similar to what the Blair government said 20 years ago about state education, that you improve the state level of service to such a high level that you reduce demand enormously, whether it's for private education or private healthcare. Personally, I don't think Labour should go into election pledging to abolish private healthcare, because that would kind of put you to almost to the left of Jeremy Corbyn. But I also don't think Keir Starmer's done that. I think he's said something that's much more vague and slightly woolly. But
that's not like him.
At the heart of it is that you improve the NHS. So I think that's perfectly sensible.
OK. Well, I mean, I have different thoughts on that. I mean, the NHS, and you say it would be a vote loser to promote private healthcare. No, to say you're going to phase it out, sorry, but it's also a massive vote loser to criticise the NHS, isn't it? Or to say we're going to have an insurance model. We're never allowed to say, what do you think, Mike? We're never allowed to say we're going to have private healthcare or Switzerland insurance model or something.
Any intelligent person, and I think we're all intelligent around here, knows that the NHS needs a massive investigation into the way it's run because it wastes so much and so many billions of pounds. So I think the politician who's going to be brave talking about health is the one who's going to say, we're going to get into the health service, we're going to get rid of middle management and bring in more nurses and doctors because it simply doesn't work. The idea of phasing out private healthcare in this country would put so much more pressure on the NHS because rich people can afford to go private. And that's taking a lot of pressure on the NHS. Am I right in thinking, John will know this, I think, that during the pandemic, when we had all these Nightingale hospitals, the NHS signed up thousands and thousands of rooms in private hospitals to take patients there, and yet, because of unions and the civil service within the NHS, not one single patient went to a private hospital because it was seen to be inappropriate that the NHS was overloaded and the private health sector was picking up the slack.
I don't think that is correct, because you think for more than 20 years...
That's John, actually.
OK, but I'm sorry, forgive me for interrupting.
He's self-identifying as me. He's put on 5 stone and he'll get away with it.
Well, quickly, and then we'll go
for more than 20 years, governments of all stripes have essentially outsourced some NHS operations to the private sector.
Yeah.
So, for example, hip replacements, whatever proportion it is relatively low, people have an NHS.
But what about the rooms they booked during the pandemic, which were never used? You must have seen that story. You're on top of most things. They booked thousands of rooms in private hospitals, which were never used because it was seen to be inappropriate to take NHS patients during a pandemic to private hospitals. That would have given the private health sector a massive boost.
Okay, but I don't know if you're having a go at me or having a go at Boris Johnson, but the NHS patients have been sent to private hospitals for decades. Now, you can agree with that or not, but it's happening now, and it's been happening since the John Major era, I believe.
All right, go on then, John.
Well, I just think the bottom line is the NHS is always used as political football. What actually needs to happen is needs to be a 25-year plan for the NHS, cross-party support on it. In fact, there is a Lord Patel, who's a cross-party Lord, who suggested this. And what the politicians, the MPs decided, we'll do that after Brexit. But of course, Brexit took forever. Now we're in the midst of COVID. But we need to stop using it as a football, and we need to stop attacking the NHS all the time and actually say, well, what are the problems? I agree largely with Mike. There's an awful lot of waste in there. It surely can be run more efficiently. I'm not against parts of it being privatised, maybe X-rays or whatever. There's something there that we can do. But let's get a plan, a proper plan.
This is where countries like China have an advantage. They can do long-term planning, but we have these things called fair elections where, you've always got to win the next election. So it's very hard to say, this is my long-term plan.
Agreed, Nick, but that's what I'm saying. That's Lord Patel's plan, was to take those 5-year things out.
Right.
Actually have a 20 or 25-year plan that the politicians of this country, instead of bitching and bickering with each other, could say, there's some common ground there. That's what we're going to do. Because that's what we need. There's masses of problems. And before we start banning private health, we need to stop the ridiculous waste in the NHS and the operations that shouldn't be being done on the NHS. But don't worry, because Keir Starmer has got about as much chance of being the next Prime Minister as I am of being Slimmer of the Year. Rebecca.
All right. People ahead in the
I love the way
polls
John's
this
doing
week.
my job for you. He's introduced Rebecca
Thanks
for me.
very much.
No, I was worried that she was getting left out this time.
Yeah, because you
Don't
talked
worry.
for so long. But it was good. It was good stuff.
Do.
Go on.
I come at this from, I am the owner of a private mental health care company. So I know it pretty well. I know that during the pandemic, we were given an amount of funding to actually prop up the NHS because they can't cope, because there's far too much wasted. I think what needs to happen is we need to have some acknowledgement that the NHS is a shambles. No offence. We've now gone into this era where we are very grateful for our NHS. It absolutely should be the ideal picture that we don't need private healthcare. But right now, we do. And actually, we need to stop bashing private healthcare, recognise the job that it's actually doing, give it more money, let it help the NHS, and do a joint process. It's not batting it from one team to the other.
But hold on, you've just bashed the NHS as shambles, which is dreadfully unfair.
It's run as a shambles. It is run as a shambles.
Yeah, but NHS staff have worked enormously hard in quite desperate circumstances for a year and a half.
No.
It's really unfair.
I said it's run as a shambles. That's a different thing. The workers in the NHS are absolutely phenomenal, and they have just been penalised by this whole vaccine farce by telling them if they don't get vaccinated, then they are out. That is the most disgusting thing that I think has happened during this pandemic, because we should be appreciating them more. But what I will tell you, from a mental health perspective, the NHS current standard is that it costs £164 per hour for counselling. We deliver it to the NHS for £65 and we get them seen within 7 days. The NHS current waiting list for mental health care is 6 to 9 months. It's a shambles.
But I don't think you're impartial.
OK, so basically we love the people. We have questions about the system. Let's move on to perhaps an even more controversial one. A woke head teacher slammed by parents for teaching their children about white privilege has resigned.
Yes.
So Robin Appleby, who's paid around £400,000 a year, I'm in the wrong job, many people would say that already, for running the most expensive school, reportedly gave pupils this so-called privilege checker chart so that they could audit their own privilege and victimhood. You can see it there. The closer to the centre you are, the higher your privilege rating. So it's unclear exactly why she's decided to resign. I mean, it's quite clear to me, but the Mail Online, will I get into that? Who knows? The Mail Online reports a letter sent to parents said she'd left to focus on her own well-being and that of her family. So we've got this privilege checker chart. I mean, I had a look at this thing. It's quite bizarre. You've got all these different factors of privilege. The weirdest one to me was religion, because like, how can a religion be privileged? So it's this weird woke elite stuff. This is someone who's paid $400,000 to teach this stuff about privilege. So let's go, Rebecca, what do you think?
Absolute nonsense. Absolutely despise all this woke malarkey.
But you're on the right channel.
I'm really I am really
We're impartial. We're impartial.
I like
am
malarkey.
really pleased that she has resigned, because I think that was absolutely disgusting. These poor kids that were going home saying to their parents, I want a DNA test because I need to know how much of a victim I am. You have got your messaging wrong. That's why she's had to resign, because she's done it in the wrong way, and she should have done a more joint approach and actually have... there is somewhere in the middle for this, and she went far too on whatever side you want to call it.
John, where are you on the privilege chart? I think you're right slap bang in the centre.
I don't know if you remember, when we were kids, we used to make these circular things. It was always a way to try and chat up girls.
Those little things where you...
Yeah, where you had... Put all your mates' names in and your girls' names and what colour do you want.
Folded it up and it came out with your outcome. Yeah.
So I'm all for it. I think it's great. And I think I would score really high. I've really woke me. I really believe in all this, just like the rest of the population on the planet of Zanussi. It's time, as Rebecca just said, to stop all this nonsense. We don't want to go back to having a racist society. Or well done. Have you ever thought about going into comedy? I think it is time to get rid of all of this. We don't want to go back to racism and sexism and misogyny and all the rest of it. But all of the rest of this, it's not the real world. It's garbage.
It's critical race theory stuff,
what really worries me about this one is that the reason she's quit and backed down is because the parents were very wealthy parents and they employed lawyers and barristers and everybody else. What worries me is this is also happening in state schools where the parents don't have the ability to bring pressure on the head teacher and the governors of the school, and it's gone on all over the country. This is a flagpole that we've got to look at and say, if it's happening there, in one of the richest schools in the country, it must be happening everywhere else. Why aren't we looking at that?
And critical race theory is cobblers anyway. The most deprived people proved in survey after survey is white working class
Absolutely.
boys.
And these parents...
Stop denying it.
These parents were employing solicitors and barristers to ask that head teacher, why are my children coming home from school and telling me that they are guilty of white privilege? They didn't even know what the word meant.
They're telling children they're evil, Though I should say, class did actually appear on that privilege chart. They did have class on there for a change. But yes, I mean, Mike's saying it's a rich... It does seem to come from the elites, this woke stuff, though. If you look at, like, the elite Ivy League schools in the US, they're always the worst offenders. But what do you think, Peter? Do you have a different view from this lot?
Well, how much are the fees at this school, which is attended by the children?
38,000 a year. 38,000 a year.
So if your school fees are 40 grand a year, and I believe in parental choice, but if the fees are 40 grand a year, I don't think you need a purple chart to work out where you are in society.
Right, you think the privilege is somewhat self-evident. You're right, OK, fair enough. All right, well, we've dealt with that one. Nailed it. So, more news from the news agenda after the break as we reveal the only two people who the Queen answers the phone to. Yep, all the hard-hitting stories tonight.
Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
Looking ahead to tomorrow's weather, and the UK is looking to get off to a cold, frosty and in places icy start. Let's take a look at the details. Cornwall and the far west of Devon will start Sunday rather cloudy with some showers feeding in from the north. Elsewhere across southwest England it will be dry and fairly clear, but frosty. Southeast England will also be holding on to a fair amount of cloudy and breezy weather, although most places should start the day dry here. Across Wales, there will be a few showers towards the west, but much of the country will be dry with fairly clear skies and a fairly widespread frost. The northwest of England will begin Sunday dry, clear and frosty too, and after the very windy weather that we saw on Saturday, the northerly breeze will finally have eased down. A few showers will continue to filter into the northeast of England, one or two of which could be wintry. However, further inland it will be much clearer. Icy stretches are expected in some parts. Outbreaks of rain and snow will affect northern and some central parts of Scotland, and although clearer skies are likely further south, there will be generally a lot more frost and some ice around. Across Northern Ireland, cloud will be spreading in from the west and there'll be the odd patch of light rain. That cloud should begin to lift the temperatures a little though. Through Sunday morning there'll be some showery rain and local snow, mainly across northern and eastern areas. Elsewhere, sunnier weather is likely. And that is how the weather is shaping up during tomorrow morning.
It's time to remind ourselves there's always another winter. Canary Islands sponsors the weather.
You're You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
gbviews@gbnews.uk.
Thanks for being part of the GB News family.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
I'm Colin Brazier. I've reported from more than 70 countries around the world, covered wars from Afghanistan to Iraq, from Lebanon to the Balkans. I'm trying to bring that experience, that feel for events, to the studio. And something else, I'm ready to give an opinion. Today's stories with a spark. Brazier from 8 p.m. weekdays on GB News.
Let's return to the headlines which are breaking right now and tomorrow's news in the news agenda. So, a doctored photo of the Duchess of Cambridge has been used as part of a domestic violence campaign. And we've got to give a warning, some people might find this distressing. So, the poster has appeared on walls and bus stops so far in Milan and in Spain. There it is. It's been reported the picture was edited by artist Alexandro Palumbo. It's thought permission was not sought from Kensington Palace. Whoops. So a number of other high-profile figures had their faces doctored. It's understood the photos are intended to visually shock rather than suggest any Photoshop celebs are actually victims of domestic violence themselves. So there we go. We can all see the photos. So we're going to ask the panel, is this in bad taste? Mike?
Well, I think it's totally misrepresentative. Rebecca will know better than me. When women suffer domestic violence at home, you often can't see the wounds. And I mean that sincerely. It can be intimidation, it can be a slap, it can be, something else. But that is, if that actually happened in real life, obviously the person who'd inflicted that sort of damage on a woman would end up in jail for 15 years because of the physical wounds. But what I'm saying is, no, Rebecca, I'm right. 99% of domestic violence is often undetected physically, right? Do you agree? Yeah. And also, by the way, I'd like to have seen a man's face in there because men are subject to physical violence and domestic violence at home as well.
This campaign is absolutely atrocious because actually the person that's done this actually says that it's about gender-based violence. Sorry, are we joking? All the pictures that you've done are of females. What about men?
Yeah.
But also, what about the mental abuse side?
Absolutely.
Can be just as horrific.
Oh, more can be worse.
The second of all, this is unbelievably bad taste. Like, this is absolutely atrocious. And I think that I'm not all for I don't like cancel culture, but I'm up for cancelling this guy. Because how on earth do the partners of the people that are in forget the fact that they're celebrities, they're still humans at the end of the day. How do their partners feel that this is being used? This is nonsense.
It's a good point, actually, about the genders, just because it reminds me of that movie, the documentary, The Red Pill, where even though there was a large amount of domestic abuse against men, there was a taboo around admitting it to the point where they weren't even allowed to open shelters. When they did, people sort of picketed them. It was a real taboo issue. What do you think, John?
I think it's in pretty poor taste. It's not just the partner of the person. I mean, for example, Prince William. What about his children or her children when they see these pictures? However...
And they didn't ask. That's quite crucial.
They didn't ask. However, it's brilliant marketing, isn't it? Because every news programme is talking about it. So on that level, you've got to just put that in the thing. I'd like to see more serious discussion of domestic violence. And I agree with Mike that men can suffer, but I really want to see it addressed properly. Only now do the police no longer call it a domestic. There's still an attitudinal problem to it, and men need to be told very clearly, never do that.
And women.
Although it's not just men. It's not.
women.
No, I said that earlier.
I said that earlier. Sorry.
I don't want to sort of diminish that it's mostly women who are victims of this.
What do you think, Peter?
Well, domestic violence is an evil, and this doesn't seem the right way to raise public awareness. As I think we've all said, if you're a family member of one of the people depicted, it's going to be very distressing seeing these images.
Well, I suppose the argument, since no one's given the other side, is it's a sort of shocking image that might bring attention to the issue in an artistic, shocking way, but you're not buying it.
Well, I think art has to have intrinsic value, and I think obviously he started out from the position of trying to raise public awareness of domestic violence, but has gone down a path that really none of us, from all our different views on life, find appropriate or acceptable.
Real people, real stories is what should be more important than this fakery.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. If they found a real victim and a picture of just a bruised eye or something like that, it's much more realistic than... they looked like they were effigies, didn't they, rather than...
Well, his photoshopping skills are also poor.
Yeah. No, it's true.
All right. Well,
Is he any good on TikTok?
I have no idea, but he needs to get lost now.
Yeah. All right. Well, we seem to have solved that one, so let's move on. A mum's been handed a £70 fine for what she claims was stopping on yellow zigzag lines for 15 seconds to give way to oncoming traffic. So Katie Pender-Eccleston was handed the fine by Dartford Council after stopping her car outside a primary school, according to Kent Online. We can see the video. She's not prepared to pay the fine and is appealing. So Katie's partner insisted if the CCTV footage was longer, it would explain why she stopped on the yellow lines. But Dartford Council declined to comment due to the ongoing appeal. So this sounds like classic nanny state stuff. John, what do you think?
Well, no, I get very annoyed with people parking on those lines. They're there for a very specific reason, which is the safety of that woman's children and all the other children there. Now, I don't know the facts of the case. I don't know whether she was there 15 seconds or not. But, that's not a defence. The zigzag line means don't park there.
She was waiting for a car to pass. She went
Well,
park.
if that's what she says...
Oh, we're calling more people liars?
No. We'll have to take her to trial as well. The simple bottom line is loads of these women dressed in their blooming pyjamas take their kids to school in their big tractor type cars and park on the lines. They don't think the law is for them.
You think it's entitlement?
It may be men in pyjamas as well, rather than
usually women who
it may be
children to
men in pyjamas.
It could be men in pyjamas.
John, you were so careful on that last one. Now you've come out all sexist on this one. What do you think, Rebecca? You're cringing.
You're giving me
visibly cringing.
I honestly, I can't. What are you doing?
Go on, tell it.
No, because this is ridiculous. In fact, actually, I see a lot of men taking people to school. Where on earth are these preconceptions actually coming from?
Well, that's a separate issue. What about the zigzag lines?
How long is it since
What
you took
about
your
the
kids to
zigzag
school?
lines? What about the zigzag
lines? Like Andrew Marr, tell us about the zigzag lines.
She wasn't parked on zigzag lines.
She
was letting a car pass.
I think it's an indication of how in this country over the last 20 years we've lost the niceness about our country. If that had happened 20 years ago, there'd have been a deal between the parking warden and the driver. Now, don't do it again, move on, that kind of
It's
stuff.
not a parking warden, it's the camera now.
Yeah, I know, but it's not immediately slapping a ticket on the window. I blame Gordon Brown for all this. When Gordon Brown got in as Chancellor with Blair, he immediately revised the funding of local authorities, particularly those in Tory areas, right? And he said to them, raise your money from your local people. They've got big semi-detached houses and they can afford to pay more. He put the council tax up massively, but he also said, raise more wherever you can. Parking charges went up and massively, OK? And that meant they employed people to enforce the parking laws. That's just one aspect of local authority control. Hang on, excuse me, let me finish. And that meant that from that moment on, the give and take between your local authority and the people who lived there disappeared. It became authoritarian, and you did it their way, or you paid a big fine.
I think this is absolute nonsense.
No, it's not.
I do remember something called the poll tax, where a Tory government was putting a lot of charges on ordinary people.
Wasn't that popular, I recall?
Well, exactly. And you remember that someone called George Osborne hacked away at local government funding from 2010.
I'm not a big fan of George Osborne, but he took his lead. He took his lead from the Labour government.
You got grumpy when people interrupted you, and now you're shouting over me.
No, I'm not.
Right? The Tories cut local government funding under the coalition by 40%. So you're wrong about your reference to Gordon Brown.
Who started
You got grumpy when I tried to interrupt you.
I'm asking you a question. Who started it?
Who started what?
Who started the reorganisation of funding for local authorities? Gordon Brown started it.
Don't wave your finger at me.
I'm not waving a finger at you.
You're getting overexcited and you're not letting me speak.
Microaggression.
Rubbish, Mike.
He destroyed the pensions industry in this country to bring in more money from rich people.
You're moving all over the place. It was a question about parking.
Hang on.
Now you're talking about pensions.
Yeah.
I think that's where you know you're on a sticky wicket.
No, it's an attitude.
It's
an attitude.
Everyone
It's an attitude.
The Tories cut local government funding and there's been parking wardens for how many years? Decades.
Did Gordon Brown
I can't believe we
cut local authority funding, Peter? Did Gordon Brown cut it?
In which fiscal year?
97.
Wow.
Well, there were two governments in 97.
Yeah, OK. Second half of 97, then.
John's bored. I can't believe this is the story that got
I've no idea.
controversial. We
I'm
talked
losing
about
the will to live. Can we move on?
idea. Can't answer
But
your
it's
own
the
question.
parking one.
It's
that
your
it kicked
question.
off.
No.
All right.
It's your irrelevant question.
Sounds like we're not going to actually resolve that one. So, I mean, I didn't, to be honest, I didn't even care about that one because I sold my car. When I moved into my flat, they said it was going to cost 20 grand extra to have a car parking space. So I just sold my car. Now people move in, they get them for free because they haven't sold them. Anyway, outrageous. So let's move on from my problems. A pub worker claims her smoking break saved her life after this happened yesterday. So that was Cheryl Pound. It was reported that Cheryl Pound went outside the Star pub in Bridgend just after 1:30 a.m. while Storm Arwen raged around her. Look at that, just having this. Oh, there you go. So yeah, that was Storm Arwen with its 100-mile-an-hour winds, and she said that cigarette saved my life. I thought smoking was bad for you. What do you think, John? Did you smoke, John? Anyone?
No, I've never smoked, thank God.
Any smokers here?
No.
No, well, it could have saved your life.
Mm-mm.
What do you think?
Be the first time a fag
Nonsense.
saved your life.
Absolute nonsense. If she wasn't smoking, she'd have been inside working, which is where she was supposed to be.
Ooh.
So actually, you know, it's just ugh.
Shots fired. All right. So you think she should have been working?
Well,
John?
she was working. She just went on a smoking break. Her life's not been saved by smoking, because if she wasn't smoking, she wouldn't have been outside. She'd have been in the pub. She'd have missed the tree anyway.
All right. So you're right. Just stay in working. Never take a break.
Yeah.
Well, go and take a break in a back room. You don't need to go outside in the middle of a storm.
I think it's a bit of a non-story, to be honest.
It's a bit of a...
It's an act of God.
Yes.
And how can you possibly predict where you should be when an act of God takes place?
Oh, thank you for
inside
shouting out
or
God.
outside?
Do you believe in God?
I believe in God.
Oh, good. Me too.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right, we agree on something. I don't know if you have anything on that, Peter. It's just a funny
There's a
clip, really.
temptation for us to row with each other all the time. We can just be glad the pub landlady is okay.
Yes, exactly.
Absolutely.
What a wholesome message. All right, so let's do the next one. The Queen will answer her mobile phone to just 2 people, and none of Her Majesty's sons make the list. So, royal commentator Jonathan Sacerdoti, that may well be, says Her Majesty's daughter, Princess Anne, and her horse racing manager, John Warren, are the only 2 people she'll speak to most. Now, both of them can talk to the Queen from anywhere in the world. Apparently, John Warren is one of the world's leading horsemen and looks after all the Queen's racing and breeding interests. It was reported that Her Majesty's mobile has been anti-hacker encrypted by MI6, so nobody can hack into her phone. So don't even try it, John. So now, did you guys even know the Queen had a mobile? Did you know? Are you shocked about her 2 favourites? Let's start with Peter because he's looking at me.
Well, I do like the idea that the Queen has one of the most high-tech and robust mobile phones in the world, because I suspect she may not be on a smartphone and Facebook and the internet all that much.
OK. What do you think, Mike?
Well, I would have thought that the head of MI6 had a better encrypted phone than the Queen, to be honest, because I think it's, better that he does have for the security of the nation. But this is one of those stories put out to titillate you. It can't be true, can it? It can't possibly.
Oh, you think it's not true?
Well,
Fake news.
I think it's part of a story. I think, yes, Princess Anne and yes, the racing manager will have access to the Queen's phone if she's got a mobile phone, which I imagine is carried around by a lady in waiting anyway. She doesn't carry it around in a handbag, does she?
What?
But are you telling me that Prince Charles can't ring his mother on a direct line when he needs to ring her, when he suddenly learns that, Prince Harry got up to some other mischief in California, Prince Charles is in Highgrove, he needs to ring his mother in Buckingham Palace or Windsor? You're telling me he can't do it directly? I don't believe it.
Well, I don't know. I believe it. I'm wondering if the Queen's like my mum. You try and get hold of her. She doesn't answer for ages for no reason. Oh, sorry, it was in my bag. What do you think, Rebecca? Do you believe the story that it's the horse racing person and her daughter? I mean, her daughter makes sense. The horse racing guy was the curveball.
Couldn't care less.
Not bothered?
No.
Can you pretend to be bothered? Because that's your job on this show.
Hang on a minute.
I don't mind. We'll ask John. He's shaking his head in disbelief.
Well, my view is simply this. If I had a family like hers at the moment, I wouldn't want to hear from any of them. No. That's why she's... I mean, that's what the story's implying as well, isn't it? That's what it's about. I bet she's got them all on block, apart from Princess Anne. She loves the horse racing. So good luck to Her Majesty. She's done a wonderful job. Yeah. We love her to bits. Yeah.
Who would be the two favourites in your phone, if you were the Queen or if you were John Gaunt?
It certainly wouldn't be you after your performance tonight.
Got it.
In the way you've been so sexist and misogynist and, you sound like Twitter. I think Parry. I think Porky Parry over there.
Well,
we don't talk enough.
That's very kind. Just to contrast this, by the way, has anybody here still got a landline in their home?
No.
Yeah, but they're going to be banned, aren't they?
Well, I was about to say, my landline, there's only one person who ever rings me on it, so I don't even have to look and find out who it is. But they're the only person who ever ring me now on my landline, and the rest are all on your mobile. So it's a kind of reverse type thing.
And on your mobile, it's just one person as well. Tragically. Go on, Peter. What do you think? Who would be your two favourites? Or are you surprised at the Queen's favourites?
I doubt the Queen is on her mobile phone all that much. And I just imagine she's got a range of very old-fashioned and very well-polished and posh landlines. And it's a bit of a non-story, isn't it?
Well, we like to end on a light one. You know what I mean? They're not all supposed to be totally heavy hitting. Going back, who's on your phone? Because Mike's only got one friend.
Who's on my phone?
Who are your two favourites that you go to?
We're back to that chatting up game at school.
Oh.
Who's on your phone, mate?
Who's my favourites? My darling assistant, Annabelle.
Okay.
She's wonderful. Yes, wouldn't do without
and then
her.
some horse racing
And actually, my mum.
Yeah.
And my dad.
That's a safe one. All right.
But my kids, I'm not fussed for hearing from them.
All right, cool. Well...
They're too busy TikToking.
They just want stuff from me. No.
All right, well, we've nailed that important story. Thanks, guys, for coming. This has been fun. Thank you. It's been good. You've been very helpful. I've tried to fill Mark Dolan's massive shoes. I've done my best.
You've done a great job.
Thank you very much.
Well,
thank you. Didn't need the pat, but thank you very much. So, thanks for watching, everyone, and we'll be back tomorrow. Don't know who will be here, really, but thanks to my panel, Rebecca Jane, Peter Edwards, John Gaunt and Mike Parry, and thanks to Mark Dolan, who may well be back soon.
You're watching GB News live across the UK and the world on our digital stream.
GB News is Britain's news channel.
We are the UK's home of discussion and debate from all perspectives.
We are here for you. Don't forget to join our YouTube community by clicking on that subscribe button.
And if you want the GB News app, you can click and catch up on programmes anytime.
We love to hear from you, so email us.
GBviews@gb